Check, check. Check, check. 10 o'clock, sounds good.
Are they muted? I mean, not just this way.
Mute it back.
That's always good.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. You don't have to go. Okay, we'll just let it go.
Oh, yeah, that's, I understand.
Hey, Karen.
Bye-bye now. Okay, good.
All righty, when we're ready, Miss Hill and Mr. Art, are you on the telephone?
Present.
Very good. Write that down. John, would you like to begin?
Okay. We could start with the low-hanging fruit.
Let me interrupt. Mr. Jackson will be here. He was waiting on something, but he will be here momentarily, and he will join us when he gets here. Go ahead.
Okay,
Thank you.
Let's just go through the non-general fund budgets. Okay, which is that one set of emails that has all the small budgets in it.
Yes, sir.
Point Mallard and landfill, basically the standard for there is the projected revenue is reasonable and exceeds the projected expenses, and that's true in both cases. The gas taxes, and we can go through our road projects. So if you want to go through each road project, we can.
I would like for us to, if you don't mind, we have a couple that were on tap to get finished this year, and we had to kind
Are in
of
here.
pause.
Right.
They're in here for next year?
For 21.
Okay.
That does include.
Go
the Central
forward,
Park
and I will
one.
check on an
Yes, sir.
email to make sure that we have all the ones that we thought we did. But go ahead, and I'm listening, and I'll pull that up.
Okay. If you look at 002, Fund 002 gas tax, the three projects are Fremont Road, Brook Manor Drive southeast, and Wood Trail Road southwest. Fremont Drive was one of the projects of the four that we talked about. Okay? So that's in Fund 2. Fund 3 has 8th Avenue, which is one of the projects from 20 that carried forward. Wildwood Circle, McCartney Street Northwest, 7th Avenue Southwest, another portion of McCartney Street, Cherry Street, 1st Street Northwest, Madison Street Northwest, Westmead, Lexington. It's like $380,000 in road projects there. And then the third gas tax is Regency and 1st Street Southwest, Regency being in one of the delayed ones from 20, and then Central Parkway is in 61, Capital, 63. $63, which you don't see a budget for.
So it is not budgeted?
No, it's budgeted. It's not something that needs to be approved. 61.
We've already approved that, right?
Yes.
And the 8 is what you're saying? Okay, good.
Okay, so all those four projects are in there, plus the additional ones that were added. Okay. Heritage. Is this the same items that you would normally see every year? There's some ADA stuff. Building infrastructure reserve. Litter grates, new hose, security cameras and upgrades, switch upgrades, new NAS. Docket and corrections are basically funds that are used by the police and the court. Nothing extraordinary there. The same with drug seizure for police. Room occupancy is debt service.
And
School,
let's pause there, because this will be important for tonight's meeting as well. When you have the room occupancy tax, it will come up with the Point Mallard question. I believe after so many days, and I'll have to confirm this with Jason or Stephanie, the room occupancy tax goes away at the campground. I believe our 180-day, and it does, and I have actually
I
the
think it's
state.
180.
And
That is correct.
Thank you, and I have the state law too, I can email anyone. So with this change of the federal law, then it will mean that will recur continuously, because 180 days will be the limit.
Right, so you'll have more people paying that occupancy.
Correct, so there will not be a stoppage, if you will, in occupancy tax at Point Mallard, no
Correct.
matter how long you stay.
Correct.
No, it's 90 days. 90 days.
Hey, Paige.
90 days.
Yes, Christie?
Hey, this is Stephanie.
Yeah, hey, Stephanie, thank you.
Hey, Herman actually gave us some information. That is actually changed. It's 90 days that the lodging tax stops. So they'll pay the first 90 days and will not pay the second 90 days. But if they were returned to camp with us, it would start over after the 179 and start back over day 1 through day 9.
Right, and that,
Is that new for the hotels as well?
I'm not sure about the hotels. Herman just gave me that information.
Okay.
Jason and I that information just last week, so.
Okay.
We're done that.
and this is pursuant to Alabama State Code 1975, 40-261, tax for, that is the definition. So we have it.
This just deals with RVs.
Okay.
It doesn't deal with hotels.
Okay. So just so we're aware, because that will come up this evening.
Yeah, and that's the Ingalls Fund, so
Mm-hmm.
that's narrow in use.
Why don't you go ahead and define narrow in use? I know what it is, but let's
It's
make it.
got
up
to
for everyone.
maintain Ingalls, and I think that's it. It's primarily the debt service on Ingalls, which came from general fund, landfill,
2012.
and bond.
Primarily, it's been used for debt service, is that correct? Christie, and let's just let you touch on it because you're the expert on it. The self-imposed tax, can you explain that to everyone?
Well, yeah, so, I mean, we obviously, as an industry, came to the city council and said, we will self-impose a tax on ourselves to pay the debt on this project. That's how that came about. Like, no industries can self-impose a tax on themselves to make things happen. Tammy Reeves, I believe, was a spokesman for that, and led that effort, when I worked in the tourism industry.
And that was a
So it was self,
was it $2?
I believe it's $2 now at this time.
I guess my question to you, Herman, I'm sure that has a stop date, because I've been in some of their meetings where the people who self-imposed it on themselves have thought of new ways or are thinking of new ways to use that money.
Well, that's
Yeah, and the Hospitality Association met with John when he came on board with the city, and I think John and Kyle worked up a spreadsheet. They met with the Hospitality Association a couple of times to kind of share where they were with paying off that debt.
Do you have that spreadsheet? I just think it
This
important.
was a couple of years ago.
They're talking about
Because the hospitality industry was curious as to when that payoff debt was, so that they could look at other projects to fund that would, be economic development and generate new dollars for the city of Decatur.
Are we talking about three different funds with three different payoff dates, I believe?
That's correct.
So
But that-
year 2025, 2032, and 2032, I believe it is.
I don't know. I can't tell you the particular. I can tell you what the balances are, but I can't tell
I
you.
knew you were at about $1 million surplus at one point.
Right. That $1 million that was sitting there was the money that we were talking about. We didn't touch because the discussion was going on about EC and Ingalls. And so we never did anything. So that's a balance there. So one of the things we can do is
And
we can
let me
pay-
clarify, and that is from the self-imposed $2 tax, right?
That's correct.
It's the amount that was more than paying off the debt.
Fund 10.
Right. So I'm just saying for the residents and for future councils, this is a self-imposed tax. They didn't have to do that. You don't see that often. You can ask Christie, this is her expertise.
Hello, yeah.
And I think we better be very mindful of what we try to do with that, because they can cease that at any time, because it was self-imposed. It is not a law, it is not required, it is being helpful to the city of Decatur. And I'm glad we looked at AC. We did see, for people who didn't know, the building wasn't built, the windows and the doors, we could put AC in, the air's gonna go out just as quickly as it comes in, because it wasn't built for that. It was built for an open-air fishing tournament facility. And therefore, after looking at it, we could put the AC in, it's not gonna cool it. We're gonna spend money for just cooling, I guess, the river. But, so that didn't make sense, obviously. We have, and I'll go ahead and say this, and I don't think Christie will worry about that either. We have, with hospitality and tourism, spoken about another place similar to Ingalls, maybe not as large, that some of that money could be used for, that would be AC and heated and have all the amenities of having the nice things that we have there at times that either get really hot or really cold. And I think that's I'd like to applaud those people who self-imposed that tax. Thank you for that money. And I think we need to be mindful in the future of how that is spent and spend it correctly, or it can be taken away very quickly. Christie, do you have anything to add?
I just think that it was very forward thinking of the individuals at the time to partner with the city to do that. I think what they've always desired is that open line of communication to discuss what, maybe new elected officials or city staff, were looking into and how we could do it together. The whole purpose of that was so that we could generate new revenue for the city of Decatur. So I would think that, moving forward, it would behoove us to invest that money in things that would generate new dollars. And I think they just want to maintain that open line of communication moving forward.
Thank you. Sorry for the-
One other option you have with that is paying off the general fund debt that Ingalls has.
And I would just say, Christie, you may know this, is there a contract, if you will, on procedure when the city spends that money? Do we need to get together with that association? I mean, personally, I think that would be a good thing. I think, like you said, communication is key. I would hate to take the money that they have self-imposed on themselves and spend it in a way they weren't very excited about.
I don't know that there's anything in writing. Maybe Herman knows. I don't know. I don't have my hands on anything that has an end date other than we were just committed to paying off that debt. I think the whole goal was when we get close to, maybe within a 5-year period of paying it off, that the administration and, city directors, whoever is planning, whoever is in charge of maybe even that one Decatur plan and implementing things would look at, hey, let's have a conversation about what's that next project we could fund jointly.
Well, I would look at it historically. You take, for instance, the air conditioning project there. That was discussed with the tourism group. It wasn't done, in a void, and it was pretty hashed out. We came to the conclusion we came by talking. So one is, whatever we would do would require council approval. Two, I suspect that anything that would come to council would have sufficient discussion ahead of time so that it wasn't a surprise to anybody.
And those meetings you're talking about, they occurred over more than the course of a year, didn't they?
Oh, yeah, there was a time when it was almost like I would consider a done deal where we were putting air conditioning in, and then Jason did additional research and found that, okay, we were gonna have to have a mechanical room, we were gonna have to move the kitchen, we were gonna do this, and then there was a question of the air conditioner efficiency and what additional work to the perimeter of the building would have to be done to kind of seal it and everything else, and at that point, it was like,
Right. And I would hope in the future, but if we don't have anything in writing, John, that could possibly be misused by an administration. And so I would like to see Herman, before this council is gone, that we talk with tourism and we get, or whomever we need to, and get a resolution where that conversation must happen for that money to be spent.
I'll say, we have it restricted in the CAFR, which we require to provide some type of documentation in order for it to be restricted. It reads that it's restricted for tourism product development. So I don't know if that meets,
That's vague.
I'm just saying what we currently have in place, so.
That's too vague for me,
Well,
Kyle.
really, it might sound vague, but if you think about it, tourism product development is anything that would generate new money. And that's the term that's used in the tourism industry quite frequently is, you know, we're not gonna buy a garbage truck, but, I mean, that would be ideal for that industry to buy a garbage truck, but it might be ideal to invest in a new attraction at Point Mallard Aquatic Park, or the golf course, or somewhere that would draw in tourism dollars, if that makes sense.
Christie, I think the comment that Paige was making is more relative to inclusiveness in the conversation. Somebody in the city could make their minds up where they want that money spent and declare it tourism, and there'd be X amount of people who believe it.
That's true.
Herman,
And I
if
feel
you-
like that's
But that
tried to
can't be
happen
done privately.
before in the past,
What?
but then you get enough people that work in that industry to come together to, you know, maybe have additional conversation, and then it kind of dies down. But, yeah, if there's nothing in writing, then it might behoove that industry, Charles, if you wanted to talk with Danielle about that, and the president of Hospitality Association to come up with maybe an ordinance on the books that once that money has paid off the debt, we sit down as an industry, and an association with the city to look at new opportunities.
And I believe we can do that. Herman, would that be possible?
Well, if I understand what Dee said, and I think I do, we just need to get what Ms. Neal just stated, get that group together and memorialize in a short resolution and to be put in the record that reflects what the intent is. We presently know what the intent is, pretty simple. We kind of pay off the debt, but yes, it gets paid off. So yes, that can be done, sure can.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Okay, no other questions on that. School fund is next. That has the SSUT in there. It also has appropriations to the library, Child Advocacy Center, Decatur Youth Symphony, and Boys and Girls Club, totaling $200,000.
What's that amount that goes this year, John? I know it, but I'll let you say it. $500,000?
$500,000. But again, it's 25% based on whatever we budget on the revenue side, and we budgeted $2 million on the revenue side. And we could, if we were to budget $3 million, that number would be $750,000.
It will continue to rise.
Yeah, so they get the action. Personnel board, nothing,
Well, let's step back just a minute. In order to do what he just described, we do a resolution that spells out exactly what he just said. That's acceptable to the Board of Education.
I think that's what's
We
on
have it
the
on the agenda tonight.
There's a resolution that says to give 25% to the school.
I know, but if you're gonna take portions of that,
We've been in conversation with
I
them.
know, what I'm saying, you got, not tonight, but before,
But if you,
We have-
but let me ask you this, if you approve the budget and that's in the budget, is that in fact,
we would want a resolution that spells out exactly what you do.
Ms. Duke, then you may need to speak to Ms. Duke. She's president of the school board. We've spoken with them several times now.
No, I'm gonna talk about that, I just want, if it's agreeable, all we're gonna do is memorialize it in a resolution, so we have it in the record, that's all I'm saying.
Would you agree, Ms. Duke, that it's agreeable?
Yes, and we very much appreciate it.
And Ms. Baggett, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you.
No, I'm not, in fact, I'm for it, it's just that I wanna make sure that we get it in the record, just like we just talked about before, and we know exactly what happened.
That's fine. Do you need them to sign something? I can go get it signed.
No, we just do it.
See, what he's saying is if you look, you go back and look at the original resolution, they never envisioned money coming through a separate avenue than brick and mortar. What Herman's saying, get that in writing now, nobody in the future can ever misinterpret what it means.
That's the simple resolution that we put forward. The school gets 25% of the SSUT received by the city, period. Now, this one time with the 200,000 is in the budget. We've had discussions, everyone's in agreement. In my mind, if you pass that school budget, you've passed those $200,000 in expenses that were discussed.
I'm good with that. I just want to make sure there are no loopholes that can be used.
No, that's why we didn't tie these particular expenses to that resolution and just did a straight 25% of the SSI.
And you've been in conversation with Miss Mandy over there?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not trying to prolong it, but we do a resolution each year to prescribe exactly where the money goes. That's all I'm saying. We'll do that again this year. So it's all fine and dandy. I just wanted to, and to pass the resolution tonight, so it's fine too. Thank you.
Next, water for resale, there's no expenses on it. That's the, I believe it's 10 cents per 1,000 gallons of water sold to be used for economic development. So there's a balance there, and we're adding to it, and there's no planned expenditures, which means if somebody wants to spend money out of there, they have to come to the,
What is the approximate annual amount building out there? Is it 200,000 or 300,000?
we've got 215 budgeted this year
Gotcha.
as revenue.
And there are certain parameters for that as well, are there not, John?
Excuse me?
Certain parameters what you can use that on?
Economic development.
Economic development?
Yes, but are there anything else that you have to clarify economic development is there?
Nope.
Okay, just making sure.
I
So
think,
public
I
matter.
think by definition,
Wait,
we
one
try
second.
not to be specific so that hands are not tied. So that if you can get 3 votes from council that says, yes, that's economic development, it's economic development. Just like public purpose is defined as service to the public as agreed upon by a majority of council.
Reading it says that there's a overwhelming amount of people in the public that will be serviced by
Correct,
this.
but that-
That's one's
that's-
own opinion.
But
So
in
that's gonna be
documents, yeah, but that vested in the opinion of the council. It's not my opinion whether it's
No, no,
public.
I understand it's not yours, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
that that can be skewed as well.
Well,
Well, I'm sure it can, but
I think the case that John's making, once there's 3 votes that support that, you can say it's differing opinions, but if they're that differing in opinion, they can go in and pass a resolution, they'll do it anyway.
yeah.
Okay, then let me go back to Herman. Herman, you and I have had these discussions after coming back from Montgomery. When there is that standard, the state requires that it be something the city spends on a majority of the residents. We've discussed this. In fact, that's one, I think, last year that we had to drop
Yeah,
an
I
appropriation.
understand. No, what we're saying is, y'all have to find a public purpose if you spend money. In order to find a public purpose, you must find that it benefits more than just a handful of people. It needs to benefit
A substantial amount. That's
vast group of
actually in the
people.
law.
It does not have to be a majority. We clarified that. So but it doesn't need to be 5 or 6 people. It needs to be something that affects the general population.
And who determines that as a council vote, essentially?
That's
That's
correct.
right. The council decides what's the public purpose. Based on
I just think,
That-
I think the residents should know that is going to be a subjective thought in each individual council mind, what is, a number one, public purpose, and number
Correct.
2, a substantial amount of the residents.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Okay?
Christie, I'm sorry, Christie, did you have something?
I do, but I thought we were finishing up the conversation with, this topic. I wanted to go back to the occupancy budget because with the new legislation for going from 180 days to 90, I would think that even next year, the tourism dollars, the lodging tax collected will be less. I mean, it obviously could be from COVID, but you're going exempt now on 90 days versus 180 in the hotels as well.
Herman, has that 90 days been in effect a while?
Since last October.
No, but I don't think you're gonna,
That's just for RVs.
I don't-
We're talking about.
I don't think you're gonna lose money on it because you're turning over now because of the 180. If you have someone who's living there 365 days, they're not paying occupancy tax for after the first 90. Well, if they're only there for 180 and somebody else comes in and and stays for 180. You're collecting $180 worth of, 180 days worth of occupancy tax, where if that one person stayed, you would only got 90. So I don't see it going down.
And Christie, that law was just for our.
Well, I
that-
think I would probably differ with that. I mean, because we have extended stay people in our hotels, and I'm coming from the hotel background just to say, just to make that comment. I mean, we have people that stay with us for 6 months and for a year.
But that's
So
different
I'm
from
just making a
RVs.
statement.
But-
Christie, the law that I have here quoted from the state, that is only for RVs. It's not for hotels.
It's not for hotels?
It is not. It's only for RVs.
You okay with it then?
It's something.
I mean, we can clarify that, but this is what I have for for Point Mallard.
If all that pans out, are you okay with it, Christie?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Charles?
If everything pans out like we told you, are you okay with that?
Oh, yes, sir, I'm okay with it. I just was making the statement. So, yes, I'm fine with it.
And I'll verify that with you, Christie, or with someone, and get back with you. All right,
Well,
John.
that's what I'm just doing, so,
Okay.
thank you.
John?
Okay, so that's all of these small budget. If anybody's got any questions, we're going to move forward with a resolution at the next meeting to approve those, okay? Now on to the general fund,
Next meeting, John, you mean roughly 2 weeks?
2 weeks,
Okay.
correct? So we'll have one more chance to discuss at the work session, but I suspect everything will be hammered out by then.
Thank you, ladies on the Board of Education. We appreciate, Ms.
Thank
Duke,
you.
appreciate your service. Thank you for all you've done for our kids. Ms. Baggett, same thing.
So in the general fund, we sent a budget a couple of weeks ago. Since then, we got the medical rates and the retirement rates and incorporated those changes into the budget. Medical rates, we had budgeted 4%, it went to 5.5%, and the retirement rates went up, but they included the estimate that we had for Tier 2 to Tier 1, that 130,000. We had plugged that into the budget, so when it was covered by the rates, we were able to back that out, so it was less of an impact than if we had done nothing. So when we plug all those items in, our delta that we need to discuss is $95,420 expenses exceeding revenue. So I know there's been some discussion of revisiting appropriations. If you'd like to do that, we can do that.
I think we also must, Mr. Lake, are you on the phone? Maybe he's not. We have just received the bids for the tennis courts at Point Mallard, which we do host several tournaments. We host the junior college tournaments there. We host the high school tournaments there. This is only at the TC Amana facility and the Jimmy John's facility back there. I've been asking for a while for the numbers. They did come in. They came in last week, which was after we had originally spoke about the budget. But those, in my opinion, need to be looked at. And I know somebody's going to say, well, you play tennis, that's the reason you want it. No. My problem is we're losing revenue from not having those tournaments. And number two, general public people who want to go play can't play because they're cordoned off right now because they're dangerous. Now, I don't know if Charles Booth is on here. What was it, $200,000, $150?
I believe it was 170. I think it was 17 court,
Yes, ma'am.
10 courts.
Thank you, Charles.
Those
Yeah, those were just quotes. We'd have to go through the formal bid process to know exactly, but it should be somewhere around those quotes.
And as we've
that they
seen,
received.
bids can come in lower. Look at the library roof, for instance. That was a wonderful surprise.
Yeah.
And they must do this work before it gets cold.
Okay, so my question is this. Is that Parks and Rec or Point Mallard?
That would be a Jason question.
I believe it'll be Parks and Rec.
I think everything on the left side of the road is Park and Rec. That's the campground.
Paige, that is correct, it's Park and Rec.
Park and Rec, okay, that was Stephanie.
And those tournaments we're losing, Paige, we're losing those to someplace around the Gulf Coast, aren't we?
Anywhere, everywhere, yeah. If
But I
they-
think
if-
they're being mostly held on the other side of the state.
And they've been here for, at least a decade or more, both of those. So you're talking about bringing in people to stay in hotels and eat and things like that, but not just for those tournaments, for the general public that want to go play tennis, because we really have not taken care of courts around the
Maintained.
city. Go to Wilson Morgan, you can't play tennis there. The nets are falling down, there's cracks, it's not, so if you really want to play, you go to Point Mallard. So if we're looking at, I believe it was 10, was that right, Mr. Booth?
Yes.
10 courts that
Yeah,
are
there was 10 courts that were looked
totally
at.
not playable now. And please remember, you have high school, Decatur High School, Heritage, and Austin. They play all of their home games there. So I think we should have got this sooner. I'm not being critical, but those cracks don't happen overnight. I think we should have gotten this a lot sooner, but it is what it is.
Okay.
So for me, that 170 has to go in because that's important.
So let's address it this way. Rather than starting off with a purse, okay. So we're at 95, we just added 170, we're at 265. Is there anything else we want to add?
I'd like to see us support the investment of the best and brightest.
At what,
That's at 100K.
Okay.
That's not in there, correct?
That's correct.
I just wanted to know at what level, Christie, 100, okay?
And when I say it's not in there, the 100,000 for the E-Center is in there. The additional 100,000 is not.
Those are separate.
Well, I think in prior years, they did take some of that, use some of that money for Best and Brightest.
Yeah, I don't know. That would be a John Joseph question I can ask.
Okay, we're at 365, 420.
And I'm not asking for John's number to be changed, but I do want to make note, the two past resolutions from the Park and Rec Board, one of those includes, and I believe it's like $175,000 for work at the tennis courts at Wilson Morgan. So the figure seems about right to me. I'm not trying to change the budget at this point, but it can't go forever. A new council is going to have to deal with that at some point.
I think there've been.
Exactly. There's several things at Wilson Morgan that need to be addressed, and I Charles just spoke of the tennis courts, but I was thinking that, I mean, obviously, if they're not using the ones at Wilson Morgan, they go to Point Mallard, but you were just talking about the tournament play, correct, Paige?
Yes,
We're losing that.
Oh, the Wilson Morgan courts, were those the courts that we were talking about making a,
there was conversation in making those other spaces for activity. You'd have to ask Jason that. That was a Parks and Rec meeting that I was not at.
And I don't think the board has met in recent months.
Yeah, so
special use, special purpose?
special needs or
Special
something. I think that's what.
There was a conversation, however, because that may or may not be available, is not necessarily the right reason to get rid of those tennis courts and whatnot at Wilson Morgan.
No, but that would be the point to make the decision, not redo the tennis courts and then decide you want to make a,
And there are quite a
Special
few. I could
needs.
see keeping two and then maybe doing the other half with special needs programming. Activities.
My only statement was just because special needs is available doesn't mean that that necessarily matches the needs at Wilson Morgan.
I would agree. I would
Yeah.
think we, you know, if there's going to be ideas for Wilson Morgan, we might need to check with our residents in the city because it's such a centralized park that there's tons of people walking there. Maybe there could just be new life to it if we had a plan for moving forward and making improvements to it.
And I want to say that Jason, they did a study, and Stephanie, you may not know this, they did a study, and that was something they were looking at, and we would have to ask Jason to confirm that, though. But I'm with you, I think it needs to be used appropriately.
If you don't have,
Thank you, go ahead, Stephanie.
I'm sorry, yes, that's correct. I know that they were talking about different options, but, Jason wanted to apologize. He actually had another meeting scheduled today before we knew this was coming.
That's
So
fine.
that's the reason I'm kind of sitting in for him, but I'll ask him to reach out and clarify some of that for you guys.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I think Mr. Gowan did that study, I believe. Now, that may be,
and my only point is, once you diminish or downsize tennis on the west side of town, it'll be years before you'll get tennis recovered on the west side of town. That'll leave us with only the east side of town with any appropriate tennis facilities.
Actually, you have at each school, I believe, 2
Yeah, but
courts.
schools are different than public access.
Actually, the parks that are adjacent to schools are city parks, and the school property ends, so actually they are city tennis courts.
And their maintenance differently too.
And I agree, I think all the courts should be looked at even, anywhere they are. I think you don't want to, let it get to a certain point where it can't be fixed.
And I think we're all kind of in agreement that districts don't need to be treated different than each other.
Right, and I do believe that, speaking with Jason, he had put them on a rotating list of, they would go evaluate them every year, and similar to what we've done with.
But I agree with you, those courts are not being used right now, they're in such disrepair. I don't disagree with you at
They're
all.
safety hazards, but, okay.
Well, at this point, we're looking for what, nearly 370,000, John?
That's correct.
Yeah, and so we're either gonna have to cut, and I don't know if we get 370 out of the allocation. I don't foresee we're gonna cut any more departments. Is there an opportunity that maybe the new administration could look at mid-year to fund some of these things we're talking about? We're already still at a deficit of 95,000.
Mr. Jackson's here. Mr. Jackson, I know you're catching up.
I'm sorry, I'm
No,
just,
that's
it was
fine.
unavoidable.
Mr. Jackson, we started out, we went through this small budget,
Good.
nothing really,
And I'm sorry I didn't have time to go back
no, but
and
nothing
pick that up.
really
Go ahead.
remarkable there other than information.
Mm-hmm.
We're now looking at the general fund. We start out with expenses exceeding revenue by $95,420.
Okay.
Expenses exceeding revenue. We have added $170,000 for redoing the Point Mallard tennis courts.
So is that inclusive of the
No.
95,000, or that's in addition to that?
95, and now we're adding.
Okay,
So 170 for the tennis courts and 100,000 for best and brightest. So we're now at 365,420.
I'll explain the tennis court. We have
Okay.
lost 2 tournaments that we normally host. The 2-year junior college tennis tournament and high school tournament for the state. Those 2 have been passed over. We have been passed over this year because of the conditions of those 10 courts.
Part of the conversation, that Billy, wasn't just the fact that these tennis courts need upgraded, it's the fact that it's actually causing economic impact dollars for people coming into Decatur.
yeah, I think that was the whole reason that we built the tennis center out there, was for the economic impact. What is that? John, was that 2006, 2007, we built those courts? The center, and it was for the economic impact, but anyway, I'll say, go
And those
ahead.
tournaments currently are going to the other side of the state, mostly.
Okay.
Okay, so we're
And the
at
best and the brightest was how much, John?
100,000.
100, okay. Okay, I should have remembered that, I'm sorry.
Now we gotta sharpen our pencils.
Okay.
Would you like to start with?
Let me double check.
Go ahead.
Because I can look for it, but it'll take a second. The roadways, the Central Parkway, 8th Street,
Yes.
all the way up to 14th
Yes.
Avenue, and then also
Fremont and Regency.
Regency, is that the whole Regency, or is that from Surrey
That's a call
to the
question,
development?
but I can tell you because I drive over it every day from Surrey to Point Mallard Drive. They're digging up to put the sewer to the new development. And according to the discussion I had with Mayor, DU is, when they do that, they're responsible for paving curb to curb. So that whole section, which was a pretty rough section to begin with, is on DU. So I don't know how far ours would go through.
Well,
Carl-
I'll tell you this, and Christie, I think you know as well, DU has reached out to the city since we were going to repave Regency anyway, if the city would just repave that. Now, this is where I am on it. That could take till the spring, and you are very correct, from Surrey to the new development on the river is bumpy and is not suitable for cars, and it should be fixed. So that's the question.
And it doesn't,
I mean, we can do that first if we're gonna do the entirety of Regency to have it done,
well, they're not
but
even halfway done. They haven't crossed Point Mallard Drive yet. They're still on the.
from Surrey to the end, they're done.
Well, they're on the inbound side
Right.
of Regency, and that's all torn up still. They got
It
plates
is.
on it, they haven't done anything, and then they gotta go across, so.
But as you know, it is pretty poor paving work right now on the side that you're driving on.
Correct,
I drive a Jeep and it's rough.
correct, correct. But from a technical standpoint, that's on to you.
And we can do that. I have no problem if that's the way the council wants to go. I just know that I have been approached. Christie, I think you have, maybe not, I'm not sure.
But I want to say, hang on for a second.
Can we backtrack just 1 second?
So,
Do we know the economic impact if we get those tournaments, and is there any sort of, and Paige, you'll probably know this, is there any sort of a surety that we get those tournaments again if we, if we're up to par, so to speak?
Stephanie, could you get that
Danielle?
from Jason or even Danielle? Or probably Dan Lucas would have that as well, probably. Jason's on.
Possibility to get it back.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to balance things to see where we're balanced.
Sure.
Thank you.
so it looks like 175 for Regency.
And that's the entirety of it.
I don't think it's, well, again, that's a call to question. It's-
I think it is. I think that is the whole.
But, yeah, there's certain spots on there that are beyond that aren't in great shape either.
Correct.
You mentioned 8th, Fremont, and Regency, right?
Excuse me, sir?
8th, Fremont, and Regency is what you listed.
And Central. Those are the four that got deferred from 20 into.
So for this
21.
coming year, there's nothing additional, just the 4 that we didn't do last year.
No,
essentially.
there's additional. I just went through them, all the other.
That includes the Wildwood, McCartney, and the rest of them?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just wanted to be
You should have
sure what we
elect-
were saying.
You should have an electronic copy, so if you look at Fund 2, Fund 3.
Is that from that August the 4th
We do.
transmission?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the one, 2, 3, and 6, I believe, at a gas tax, and then 61 has
61.
Central Parkway.
Very good, John, I appreciate it. Still looking, but I know you're right.
Hey, guys, this is Jason. Was y'all asking something about the tennis?
Yes, sir. Mr. Jackson, would you like to add?
Yeah, I
Go ahead.
I just wanted to know, Jason, what the economic impact is if we resurface the courts, and, and we're able to get those tournaments back that we've lost. And is there any sort of a surety that we get those tournaments back that we've lost based on the fact that, we resurface our courts?
Well, we've been lucky enough to, of course, we don't get it every year, but we are in a rotation with other places for state tournaments, things like that.
Mhm.
There's different levels, of course, there's different, because A to double A or whatever. And they rotate those out. Like this year, we might get 5A and 6A, and next year we might get 1A and 2A. Or whatever, so we would stay in that rotation. What they do is they come and look, I wish I could remember his name, he used to be a ball coach, but anyway, they come and they look at your facilities, and if there's something that kind of piques their interest where they go, when are you gonna be able to fix it? I know that when I first started as assistant, we had to do some work in Johnsonville to keep those tournaments clean. The economic impact is really good because it's more than one day. You have generally people from all parts of the states that are here spending the night, and those things, especially those big tournaments like that. Does that kind of answer your question?
It does. I understand the economic impact has only got to be positive, but have we calculated any kind of return on that?
As far as calculating the economic impact?
Yes.
But Danielle has.
I can definitely do that.
Danielle can probably give a number.
Okay, I didn't know that you were coming on. Jason, I was just really trying to see, we're trying to balance this thing out and just trying to see what the economic impact is so that, yeah, just trying to see what the economic impact is so that we can more readily make a decision on how we need to be, move forward.
I'll send an email on it right now.
Sure. Just let me know what I do.
All right, thanks, man.
And I'll I'll talk to Danielle this afternoon to get.
Okay, good deal. I mean, like I said, I just think it's important that we have all the information, how that's going to impact our budget one way or another, and then it prepares us to make the decision easier. That's it.
And just note, all of our high schools play all their tennis there, so Heritage, DHS, HHS, they all play their tennis league there.
Yeah.
So at times, when my daughters played, it was full, and we have 10 courts now that are not playable. And I'm not quite, and I'll ask Dan Lucas if that's going to interfere with that as well.
Yeah.
Because if it does, I'm not sure where we'll play, but.
I think though, I guess my concern, well, we won't go into that because let's just add more to it, and that's fine. Let's add more to it.
I'll
Say something,
I'm
Kyle?
looking at the revenue account here. It looks like we bring in about $32,000 in tennis a year. We're at almost $22,000 for this year.
I think that's just the courts for public play. Now, I can verify that with.
Yeah, that's a little bit different than what I'm asking for, Kyle, but I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, where do you need us to go now?
Go ahead, I'm
What
sorry.
would you like to do? You want to do appropriates first?
Is that where you want to start to look at? Christine?
Our target's what, 375?
If everything's in, 360.
Hey, Paige, I couldn't hear what John just said.
Do you want to start with appropriations?
Oh, okay, yes, that's fine.
I added wrong. Calculator, right?
I'll give you the background to it, and then you can give me a number. Start with Carnegie Visual Arts Center. Their FY '20 budget is $18,000. Their '21 request was $40,000. We originally put in $18,000, and it was revised to $17,000.
I'll start. I mean, I've made it clear where I am on this. We've got a contract with them that goes back more than a decade, where they had, and I just don't know that we've ever honored that, and they've not honored it, so that's a discussion for the rest of the council, but not for me, because I think it has to be zeroed out based on the contract.
Sorry, say that again. We do have a contract with them?
Yeah, them and the Princess.
We own the buildings. What is the contract? If
It
you- I
was,
don't
it was
have that
basically,
from-
they came to us with a resolution and said that, I said, Herman, were they not a part of that with Princess? Do you remember?
They're separate agreements, but the idea is that they have the,
They were separate agreements, I'm sorry, let me let you go, go ahead. They were separate agreements, but they were very similar agreements, correct? That's what I thought.
the idea was for the city to settle up and then they would become self.
Yeah. And what they did, what we actually did was went to the bond market, we borrowed money, and correct me if I go off course, Herman, but we borrowed money. They were going to take over the debt service and and they were not going to come back for appropriations again. And we actually assumed the debt service after a couple of years, and they came back for more appropriations, so. And that was done in form of resolution at their request.
Herman, I hate to ask you, but I'm going to need the resolution for both of those and what it
I
says.
won't have to, I'll ask the city clerk, but I'll try to work with her.
And if you could distribute
I know
that.
that the Princess Theater, there was a fundraising drive, and there was a commitment made to the
Correct.
Princess Theater. Huh?
Yeah.
Did you give us a year on that, Billy?
It should be right around 2006. I think that was when we went to the bond market in that term.
And will it say the amount of money that each were given at that time? Okay. I'm just going to need that to look at, I'm sorry.
I think the Princess was like, it was either $1 million or, was it $1 million or, it might have been 1.2, but it was right around $1 million.
And I'll go ahead and ask the.
And let me say this, it wasn't given to them, actually, well, I guess it was then, if we assumed the debt on
Well,
it afterwards.
they came and made a presentation to the council.
Yes.
And the council decided that they would, because it is a city building, it is the arts, they would fund, the majority of the council decided they would fund this operation. With the understanding that they were going to work hard to get more pieces of the building.
And let me say, I believe, if
Yeah, I think
if
you're
we had
good.
not had COVID, Mary has done such a wonderful job doing that and had several huge concerts, but unfortunately had to, of course, the artist wouldn't come because of COVID. So that has put them in a very, very hard spot, even to continue day to day. But it's COVID, nobody's fault.
That's true.
But again, I need to look at that paperwork. I've never seen that. I'd like to look at it first. My question is, did the E-Center do that? Did we do the same agreement with the E-Center? Because I knew, probably in 16, when we took this office, that there was discussion of, undoubtedly there was an agreement that after so many years, the E-Center would take that building from the city. I know we have put in HVAC units and things like that. Was the same consideration with the E-Center? And if so, if we're going to implement it with them, should we not implement it with the E-Center?
There were conversations, but no actual agreement ever happened to transition the building to theirs, to my knowledge.
And I'll say this, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but it was a different conversation, is it completely different setup or approach. So, but I don't disagree with what you're saying, that they were saying that they were going to be self-reliant or standing on their own feet after a certain period. So I don't
So
disagree
I remember you
with
saying
that.
there's nothing in writing about the E-Center.
No, ma'am, I'm not saying that. I just don't.
Okay,
I
well-
have to go back and get the records.
Well, why don't we do that too, just in case?
We'll do
Because
that.
I don't want to do two if we have three.
I just came to observe, but I'm happy to.
I'm sorry.
This meeting's okay, thank you.
You cannot escape now.
I just know in 17, I believe, we bought a very hefty HVAC unit that went in the E-Center. We even discussed it then as a council, that, wait, I thought they were going to
Well,
be,
Please
yeah.
understand, we have leases with all three of these groups. Right?
We do. We also have a lease with the senior center too,
That's right.
okay?
So I'm just pointing out there's a lease that spells out maintenance and all that kind of thing.
Right? And I know for a fact, last year at the senior center, we replaced 2 HVAC units that had been injured in a accident. And the city-
Vehicular accident?
Yes. And I think there was a recovery of some insurance.
Somebody should have pulled their license.
It
We
was-
recovered some of it, the units that were put back were obviously more energy efficient.
But did we even out, or did we pay more than we got back?
I thought we came close to evening out except for some fencing or something.
Okay, until we get that, John, can we go to another application? I'm
Okay,
sorry.
Foster grandparents, 20 budget 7,200, 21 request 20,000. We put 72 in the budget and revised at 7,200.
And I will say, in the discussion, and you were there as well, with the school board, they are not allowing the foster grandparents to come in this year. So I'm hesitant for that money to go somewhere that their program will not be used this year in the schools. I think it's a great program, but if the schools aren't going to let you come in due to the COVID virus, then I'm not sure that the appropriation is needed this year.
Was that not going to go into the online if the online tax contribution
And that's
passed?
when they said we aren't allowing them in this year, so we don't feel like we should pay that one. And I don't disagree.
Oh, I don't disagree with that at all, but in the future, what was their stance on that?
There is no future to that funding. This was a one-year pick it up because of the gap. We anticipate revenues to recover, and we will take these back next year, is my understanding. The one-time, correct?
You mean the online tax
I was-
increase?
They were
I
getting
mean,
this
the-
as
Just the allocations for the,
Oh, just the allocation for the nonprofits, okay,
I actually
okay.
was not under that impression. I was under the impression they would take this from now on out of their online sales tax money.
I'm not saying it's wrong, I wasn't aware of
We
this
can
being the
clarify
last
that.
year of it anyway.
Maybe I was-
Clarify that, but I thought this
Either way
was-
is fine.
And then again, I think it needs some clarity, but that was kind of when Councilmember Bibby presented it, that was my assumption, was that she was presenting it as if we're going to extend the online tax portion to them, their portion to them, that they were going to absorb that from this point forward, and it wouldn't come back over here. I just, now again, I'm not saying that was what it was, I'm just saying that was my understanding.
You know, it may have been, I think, it was the amount of $100,000 that Mr. Hart
Okay.
the best and brightest, Hunter.
Yeah, and-
See, and that's where I think we're different, because the ones that I proposed actually every day affect children in school. They can legally do that.
Best and brightest don't
they
affect
can
children.
do that, don't affect children, right? So Dr. Douglas said, number one, that can't come out of my budget because that's illegal from our monies. So that's why I was under the impression this would be a yearly thing.
That's fine.
I'm asking Ms. Duke to
We can
come
get
back.
clarification, that's not a problem.
No, I mean, I don't know that you're wrong. I don't know that you're wrong. I think that you're probably thinking kind of what I was thinking, that the best and the brightest, the suggestion was that it was going to be a one-time thing this year. That was my just assumption. But based on what Paige had said, I was thinking that the others, the ones that we had allocated, or that we were going to send to their side of the street, were going to be, it was going to be a perpetual effect, and it's just going to be ongoing.
And if I could follow up on that, and I'm not saying do or don't do it, but the way I understand it, that's part of it, like a 10-year plan to be done at $100,000 a year, which if you can only do it this year, then you're not solving it for future years.
Yeah, I couldn't support passing that on, even if it were not against the law. I don't think that I would support passing that on across the street.
I've asked Ms. Duke or Dr. Douglas or Mandy to come, if they don't mind, so.
I was also under the impression that the $200,000 would be paid going forward because with it taking $100,000 of the new one, I don't think we would be in a position to pay for that ourselves.
I'm sorry, I'm not following. Are you talking about the best and brightest?
No, ma'am, I'm not. I'm talking about the appropriations that the school system was taking out of their 200. I was under the impression that that was not a one-time thing, that was going to be continual.
I think all of us feel.
Yeah,
well, most
I
of us
think so
feel.
too, and in our meeting, John, I felt they knew that, but maybe there's misunderstanding. But
Are they going?
they're coming. They're gonna come.
Is the school district going to contract with each
No,
entity?
no.
John and Mandy have worked that
Okay,
hard.
that's all I want to make sure of.
No, nothing's changed.
I'm trying to prepare my own resolution.
The only thing that's changed is where they're getting paid from. It shows up as an expense on the school budget, not an expense to the appropriations in the general fund.
Yeah.
That's why we had the meeting with Mandy
I
and the
just want to
school
make
board.
sure, it's like the police officers who paid out of that budget. Okay, that's helpful,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, so going back, foster grandparents, are we zeroing that out?
I'm just saying, I know the schools aren't gonna let them in this year.
That's fine. Remember, 365, okay?
I do, but I think it's a great program. But I don't know that if they're not gonna be allowed in, what are they gonna use that money for if they're not allowed in?
Okay, so.
And that's just my question.
Yeah, so are we zeroing them out or no? Want to give them $2,200 and we'll move on?
What was the original ask, I'm sorry, or what we were appropriating them?
They've been flat funded at 7,200. It seems like the last couple of years they've asked for 20,000.
Okay, we're going down to?
I just threw 2,200 out.
Which item?
You tell me, it's your.
But I guess my question is, if it's not going to be used this year, why would we not zero it out?
Because there was some hesitancy, and if the program still is in existence, they must be incurring some sort of cost, no?
But I believe it's in a larger, it's either the community action or it's in, I don't have it in front of me. It
And
should-
then the other question is, do they get anything from United Way? Because if they get some from United Way, then you might feel more comfortable zeroing it
I thought
out.
they had to answer that in the appropriations request.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the next one. Meals on Wheels, budget in '20 was 14,227. They requested 20,000 in '21. They were funded at 14,227, and the revised was 14,227.
I don't think, I feel good about cutting that because we have to
Okay.
provide meals. I just think
Okay.
that's important. But anyone else, their opinion is duly noted.
Billy, I thought last time you had suggested that one going temporarily to 75.
No, I actually talked about the free clinic
Okay.
going up to 75.
Oh, you're right, I'm on the wrong line.
Yeah,
You are
it's
so
free
correct.
clinic.
Community free clinic. 20 budget was 59,280, the 21 request was 59,280. In the 21 budget, we gave them 59,280, and then we revised it to 75,000.
That was where I was going. I just think with the pandemic and, I mean, really just everyday life, our free clinic is one of the entities that we have to try to, that and mental health situation that, or organization, we have to try to find those as best we possibly can.
Okay?
So are you saying stay with the 70?
Now, it's my preference, and again, I'm only one cog in this wheel of five, so I would like to see that stay at 75,000.
I don't disagree with you, I just wanted to make sure I was
Yeah,
hearing you right.
I mean, I can only speak for myself.
I wouldn't mind that if we weren't trying to find such a large deficit, but I would think they would need to be level funded. I mean, we're already at a 95,000 deficit, with these other items added, it just increased.
Chrissy, I don't disagree with that at all. I simply think that we're going to have to sort of prioritize and figure out what's most important. And I think that I personally feel that under the unusual circumstances that we're under as far as the health situations in our community, that in my mind takes priority over some of the other things that we customarily fund. And that's just
Well, I'm
my
glad that you mentioned prioritizing, because I think that's something we probably should have been doing. I mean, I'd like to invest in the arts, but it may be that because we need to make a larger contribution to the free clinic and the health department, that we have to cut some other things that we would like. I mean, I do think that there are things we should invest in that usually would bring back, a new dollar.
Yeah.
So that we can invest in the arts and other things. So I agree, we're gonna have to prioritize in order to bring this deficit to a balance.
Can we put a question mark with that to see how close we get to balancing? We can come back to that one and see.
I think we have to. I mean, I don't think it's fair just to insert it.
No.
I think we have to just put a question mark beside it, and if we can come back and we can fund it, I think that's what we do.
We were still speaking free.
But it's just I just was
Yes.
speaking of my preference, that was all.
And I agree with you. Question though, let's go back to Meals on Wheels. Are they not funded at all by NARCOG and the federal government funding?
But
Or
we
United
can
Way?
look that one up. Can we go back to grandparents on the question of United Way?
Yes, United Way.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, they do. They received $147,670 in 2018.
Are you talking grandparents or are you talking?
Grandparents,
Wow, say that again, 147 what?
148.
In their request, the money they asked for us represents 4% of their budget.
Was there any part of it that's matching money?
It's used for their match from the federal, which requires 10% match. They use our money,
A portion of their
a portion of our
matching.
money to pay for the match from the bigger grant to get more money.
Kyle, is there something I'm not aware of that, is the grandparent program being utilized somewhere other than in the school system?
I'm just looking at the application.
Okay, that's
I didn't
fine.
get specific enough to
I mean, that was the
look at
only,
financial
Yeah.
statements.
that was the only usage that I was aware of, so just trying to figure out.
Yeah, and the reason why we moved it out of the SSUT, when I spoke with Mandy, she said they were going forward with the program, and like Paige said, if they choose not to use, if it's not specifically for kids at the school or something specific to the school, they can't book the expense.
Yeah, and I realize that with schools, I guess I was wondering was there was something else in our community that it impacts that we might need to further consider the funding. That was all I was trying to figure out. I mean,
It says local United Way.
okay. Again, I was looking at it as only being in our school system. And if it's if it goes beyond our school system, then I think it's something that we have to consider instead of just zeroing it out. I mean, that was all I was saying.
I'll ask that question too.
All right, Meals on Wheels. I'll call it for United Way.
Use me.
526, 526.
Guys, let me say thanks. This access and looking this stuff up here is more helpful than we've been used to.
Hey, Jason, are you still on the line? Stephanie? Guess not.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, could you get Kelly to look at that as well? I know she worked over there for a while. Kelly, to look at the Meals on Wheels. I know that NARCOG pays for their food they have there, and they supply for folks that come to Turner Searles.
Yeah.
And just wanted to know if she knew anything about maybe if NARCOG supplied any of the money for the Meals on Wheels program.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. I would think that would be the same population.
It's not in their application,
I don't, but that doesn't, I mean,
their application.
But they're
Meals on
federally
Wheels
funded.
are together in the Community Action Partnership.
Yeah,
So
Community
they kind
Action.
of are under the same umbrella when I look at the financials.
Gotcha.
Meaning narcotics not in there?
That's correct, they don't mention.
I don't see it in the.
That's not a limitation
But
necessarily.
Community Action does get federal funding, so therefore it could.
Correct.
So it's probably the same circumstance in
Yeah,
terms of.
it would depend if Community Action wanted to spend more on the Meals on Wheels. Okay. That's what I was asking.
Okay. Next one is the senior center. 20 budget was 51, 21 request was 55, 21 budget was originally 51,000 and revised to 48.
And again, great place. It's just they have not been open since March. I'm not sure when they will open. So I guess my beginning question that Amy never answered is, the money that we allocated last year obviously was not gone by March. I would hope not, since we own the building and maintain the building. So where are you on last year's allocation? And since you aren't meeting now, if you were to get the allocation this year, what would you do with it? I never got a clear answer on that. And I don't know that I see them coming back this year. I really don't. I think that's a state, federal call. I just don't see them coming back before
It's
school
not only
season.
that, the group may be considered a high-risk group too.
Yeah, they certainly are.
That's true, and I think too, though, if we're going to look at it from that perspective, that it's 48,000 that we've allocated, and if we prorate that per month for fiscal year, then, I don't know that if they start 6 months in, that we still allocate the 48,000. Is that, I think that we would prorate that, and based on, am I off base with this?
I think that's a good way to do it.
John, tell me where I'm wrong with
If
that.
you do that, the number is still 365, okay? So that's the problem. I mean, we can come up with these ways of putting checks and balances in
Yeah.
and everything else, but the problem is we still got a $365,000 deficit that we're trying to reduce.
Oh, yeah, well, I understand that, and this has nothing to do with that deficit per se. It has to do with the fact that, in the long run, that, we would be allocating money to a center, and not that they couldn't use it, and not that they don't need it, but we would be allocating money to a program that was not in use for 2, 4, 6 months, and we would still allocate the same number of dollars.
So if
And
that's,
so it wouldn't necessarily impact this year's budget, but it could impact next year's
yeah,
budget.
but if, to follow that logic, if they've been closed for 5 months, okay, and they're getting 50,000, so they're getting 4,500 a month, where did that 4,500 for those 5 months go?
Well, and that's true, but that was already passed by resolution, that was what
But
we,
what I'm saying is, you're saying in the future we'll do that, but in the past we won't. And what I think the discussion was, what wasn't spent so that we don't fully fund them this year. In other words, that money just carries over. to
yeah,
this year.
that makes sense too. That makes sense, but, Again, I just don't know that, not knowing when they're going to come back, that we would not put a provision there where if they don't come back or they don't come back at all, John, we don't fund that $48,000, and it goes into it's money there for the next year.
That's just a matter of, there's two issues. What you're raising can be covered in the contract,
Yeah,
okay?
I just think it's got to be prorated.
Right,
Okay.
that can be covered in the contract, all right? The other issue is how much of 2020 money is out there to offset 2021 money?
And I don't disagree with, I understand where you're going, I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying, if we can utilize those dollars and for 2021, then that's what we need to do, but by the same token, I think moving forward, we still have to, because we don't know when this thing's gonna end, that's all I'm saying.
Well, I think we can incorporate a clause in all the agreements for the activities that are impacted by COVID, that if they shut down, that their appropriation will be prorated.
I think that's fair.
And put that in the agreement, and then when the proration actually happens, it would have to be presented to the council and approved by resolution.
So that'd be a budget adjustment.
Well, yeah,
I think that's,
something that wouldn't happen automatic.
I think that's necessary. Of course, like I said, it's not gonna impact the deficit at all. I understand that, but I think that's necessary because we don't know when revenues are gonna kick back in, and so I just think that's necessary at this
Like I
point.
said, that's just
Okay.
adding a clause to all the different things.
Good deal, then.
So you're right back at your original.
I would like to
question
see
about-
that. Can't speak for everybody else, but I'd like to see that.
And you get into some gray areas too, but we can resolve those.
So we're right back at your original question, we're still sitting at 365.
Well, we've got a few, but how about this? Just a thought. If with the senior center, I'm not a doctor, but flu season's coming up. I still see the older population, them not opening because of that. I know in December, you're going to do a look at revenues, how they came in, and then you're going to look what you are. If we're talking $48,000, if we see they do open up in January, which I'm very doubtful they will, could it be something then when you see where you are revenue-wise, that come back up as a question, do we want to fund that or not?
Sure, I mean, these are unusual times.
Nobody knows the answer
Right.
when they'll go
These
back.
are-
I mean, I
these are-
can't tell you that.
There's no precedent to this.
Yeah.
It's all a function of what council is willing to entertain. You can cut it now, and again, we went through this when we talked about the police vehicles. We could take the police vehicles out and address that in December, okay? Any big ticket item, we can take out and address in December. That's not a big deal, okay? It's just a matter of acknowledging what we're taking out and that we're gonna revisit, as opposed to cutting it and not talking about it anymore. That's the only difference.
Hey, Paige, I'm sorry, I have Kelly with me if you
Oh.
want to ask that question.
Hey, Kelly, when you were over at Turner Searles, and we know that NORCOG provides those meals for those residents that come in, right?
Yes.
Do you have any idea if that same population, the same folks, get Meals on Wheels delivered to them? And is that money coming off from NORCOG?
If they are part of the Turner Searles Center and they're getting meals from Turner Searles, they're not allowed to also get Meals on Wheels.
Two different things,
Two
okay.
different entities. So if they're getting one, they're not supposed to get the other.
Okay, so it's one or the other.
They
Okay,
don't qualify for both.
gotcha. Thank you. Yes, ma'am, thank you. That wasn't hard, was it?
Just gotta get the right person.
For me, I think we put a question mark by the 48, because I think that's something that's going to have to be revisited when we have a better understanding of COVID. And, I think you're going to have a better understanding of revenues then too. I think you take that out now. I don't think it's relevant right this minute.
So what's,
And I'm not saying we cut them permanently, I'm
what's
just
what's
saying
the number?
48,000, I think is what.
So you want to leave the 48?
He's saying leave the 48 in or take the 48
No,
out.
you take the 48 out until
Zero.
COVID is, at least we have an idea of when they will be opening back up.
So you're saying zero?
And they were at what, 51,
51, and they were revised in 48.
yeah. So out of the 51, and that came, you said roughly $4,500 per month. And they've been out, shut down for how many months now?
6,
Since
roughly.
March.
6 months. I think I don't think that, as long as that money is there from this year's budget,
Yeah, I don't know how much is. I mean,
Yeah, I'm looking at their expense, and my opinion, looking at their list of expenses, I think them being closed, they have a lot of fixed expenses, so whether you're open or closed, like, yes, utilities will go down because you're not in the building as much.
But they won't disappear.
You're talking about salaries and wages, they probably still paid all their employees.
No, remember she said the day she came for appropriation, she had to let everyone go except herself and one person.
Okay.
Or they've been furloughed.
You have salaries and wages, which make up 83,000 of their total. Second biggest is their occupancy, which is utilities, maintenance, pest, janitorial supplies. I can see that one going down with it being closed. Food purchases probably went down because the program wasn't running. But on the same flip side, the donation we give them makes up 30% of their total revenue for the whole year.
If you also remember when she came, they do the meals that you can buy. And she told us that day, the casserole sales, they had done more casserole sales, and they're doing those outside one day a week. But she said like $20,000 they'd already made only on the casserole sales. What does that money go to? She wasn't specific in that.
well, that's probably
Yeah.
their total revenue.
Yes.
Well,
What they're looking
and they're $7 per meal, and if they have 100 people per day, they are having that
Yeah,
now
I
because
get
they're
it.
not there, so.
I don't know what their operating costs are on a daily basis. If they provide a lunch, are they making a profit? Are they breaking even? Are they losing money? I don't know.
But Kyle's guidance is very much on cue right there. Your utilities aren't gonna drop much, but I deal with something similar in my non-council work, and food costs is down, other maintenance issues are normally down, so it's a tough guess.
I don't know how much expense dropped, but I'm saying the food program doesn't exist there right now because they're closed. That's over 50%.
Yeah.
Then you take away the appropriation from the city, that's another 30%. I mean, you're looking at just living off of casserole sales. And I can't answer that, whether or not they can
Agreed,
survive off that.
that's what I'm saying, those are two big.
and I think you brought a whole new perspective in that utilities and things like that continue to go on. So I don't know that truly we can zero them out. Hey, Mayor, can I ask you something? Do you have a problem with the officer coming and sitting over here because he's standing here and the thing is he can see the entire room from that spot? I would rather have you rest over here than to look tired. Come on over here and have a seat and be more comfortable instead of, just standing over there. I think you can see the whole room from there, correct? Good deal.
Can we do this?
Good deal.
Because we need to know for the foster grandparents as well, do they only service in school, or do they serve outside? Now, if you need me to get these questions done, I can get them done this afternoon, if you want me to. And also, can we talk to Amy and see what her general costs are to continue the program, because they don't have the $7 per day, but they're not cooking as much. I'm gonna say generally their heating and cooling is way down, guys, because each and individual room, it's a church, they have their own heating and cooling. I'm assuming if nobody's in those, you can put those at a normal temp and leave it.
You would hope.
So can we speak with her and see what her normal COVID monthly expense is?
Okay.
And again, I don't mind calling, I'm making myself notes.
Well, if we have a hard time tracking them down, we will get with you.
Okay?
Library, $441,936 in the 20 budget. That was their 21 request. That was the 21 budget, and we split that between us and the school contributing $64,000.
So it was still these same pennies, just
Same
divided
amount,
different
just
paths.
Two different sources.
I think that amount's necessary. I do think that the county should pay more, but that's,
Youth Symphony,
it's gone.
20 budget was 13.5, request was 15, our 21 budget was 13.5, was moved to the school side for
That's gone.
15,000. Chamber of Commerce Business Development, 20 budget was 50, 21 request was 50, 21 budget was 50, 47,500 was the revised amount.
Hey, do you know what specific project this is going to?
I don't.
Okay.
Now, there's another line,
Item for them that has the 5-year plan of 50,000.
yes, there's another line, that's the 5-year plan was not revised, was kept at 50,000. And if I recall correctly, the opinion was there was a long-term commitment at that level, so they left it.
But however, we had the discussion, we can't enter into a 5-year agreement with anyone. So I'm not quite
That's
sure how
true.
that even happened years ago, because.
No, I'm not saying you got an agreement. This was a 5-year plan where they were gonna look for 50, and I guess there was buy-in on that.
And when did we start that, John?
Excuse me?
When was that initiated?
I wanna say this is the 3rd year. It's either the 3rd.
No, it was here when we come in office, when Christie and I came in office.
I think prior to the start of this one, there's a previous 5-year plan, is my guesswork.
Yeah, but you know, the only thing is that, and I've said it before though, and I don't mind saying it again, is that from that group, we continually get 5-year plans, 4-year commitments, and when this one rolls off, there'll be another one. And I don't know that I'm in agreement with continuing with that.
Well, I think it's been clear, we can't do agreements like that. So from
Well,
henceforth, they need to stop,
Well,
because legally we
yeah,
can't do that.
Commitment, but the actual budgeting is done annually. You can commit for a term of office, but you can
That'd be 4 years.
do it for 4 years.
But you're not officially committing to a 5-year plan. They're providing a plan, and you're supporting it annually at a 50,000.
Every year that you vote, you're changing that commitment. You might be re-upping, you might be canceling, either way.
That's correct. You've got no obligation to that.
But the way it's listed as an allocation is the 5-year plan.
Well, that's what they called it. That's what it's called.
I think they need a better name, but I think that
That's
name,
the partnership.
Yeah.
Hey, that's the partnership where they ask us to commit.
I know, Christie, but we as a municipality cannot enter into a
No.
plan like that.
I know, we're just learning that versus when this came about. This was a couple of years ago, it's called the partnership, where it's a public-private joint partnership. There are many other partners as well.
Yeah, I have all the paperwork.
I think the difficulty in all these plans, not just chamber, but anybody's plan, is you want people to look over an extended period of time, but then you can't deal with it. So if I came to you with a 1-year plan, the question becomes, well, only 1 year? But if I come with a 5-year or a 10-year plan, then you're like, well, I can't commit to that.
Better sales pitch.
So, you get tied up with these time spans of plans, and I think you just gotta look at it on a, yeah, this is a plan, and this is year 3 of that plan, and are you getting bang for the buck? And if you're not getting bang for the buck, you don't fund it, regardless of whether it's a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, 1-year plan, whatever. And then you just move on from there and not get hung up with, ability to commit whatever. It is what it is.
And let me explain, some of our money in the past has come in from places like TVA, okay? We get TVA money. We could tell TVA we got a 25-year plan, we need that money coming in every year. When TVA sends us this different amount of money, they don't care what our plan is, do they?
No, but even, here, you got the library, we give the library close to $450,000, whether they got a plan or not, that's where we're supporting them, so,
Yeah, but it's interesting, Christie and I, a couple of years ago, we got with the United Way, and we asked them, what are the figures? What is your formula for saying if you give to a certain nonprofit? And you don't give, what was it, Christie, over 10% for salaries?
Yeah, 10% was administrative.
Yeah, and if you look at the library, that's where all of our appropriation goes. We did call that to the attention of the United Way at the time that we were working with, should we do this? And so really, our contribution is really just for salaries at the library, which is kind of flip-flop to the norm of what you would appropriate to, but it has to be funded
Correct.
And they also have separate fundraising that's done for programs.
Yeah,
for stuff. We are essentially paying for the workers.
we are their main benefit.
That's right. And I think that's important to note, that if you cut that, then, I mean, I think they're already bare bones staff, and we have people who literally, that is their only source of a computer, and you think, well, everybody has a phone. No, they don't. So they go there for Wi-Fi, they go there for just a computer, they go there for, some go there to sit in a cool place. It's
Yeah,
just, you know,
I'm just talking about, I mean, NARCOG's the same way. You would want to see something long-term with NARCOG.
They're fairly funded, I think that's different for me.
But anyway, my whole point is, I think you need to look at this year and not get hung up.
Because that's what we're determining right now, the year 21 budget.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with keeping the library where they are, I think that's important.
Okay.
I don't either.
So I've got two lines. I've got one for 47,500, another one for 50.
For library?
No, the
Chamber.
chambers.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was at the library.
No, library is done.
Okay.
Just a point of information. Since Wally has retired from the city, and as this relates to business development, Crystal in the chamber, Crystal's serving as that point of contact for us as it relates to business development. She works with the chamber. I'm not sure you're aware of that.
So this is third year of this 5-year plan.
Which again, we can't do.
Oh, I'm just saying.
I know what you're saying.
Where we are, because I'm sure, yes, they probably revise on it every 5 years, so.
Actually, I think what Herman said is that you're allowed to fund something for the time that you're in office. And I believe that if we funded it the first year, that was intent to show that during our term that would be funded.
But actually, Chuck, the prior council approved that first budget. So actually, Christie and I did not approve that in that first year. So then you have to start divvying down which councils approved what and for how long.
But you've approved the last three.
I have, but again, I think you get into a question of you get a council that may not support it for a 4-year term. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but I think it could get tricky there.
I think the greater question we have right now is determining the year 21 budget. How do we help John balance that budget? And he's been sitting here waiting answers from us for the last
I'm trying.
hour at $365,000.
Still at 360.
I'm trying.
I'm not trying to be ugly. I just
Any
say we need to
change-
focus.
Any change to the chamber? Okay,
I've said where I am, I mean, so, it's just me.
leave it. Okay, downtown redevelopment, 20 budget was 74,100. They asked for 100,000. They were funded originally in the budget at 74,100, and the revised was the same at 74,100.
There is by the way, a DU project that wanted to partner with the city downtown. I did speak with Ray about that. Christie and I have spoken about it, and I think that's something the downtown redevelopment should fund it. I think it was a $10,000 ask for the rapid electronic charging stations, which I think are wonderful when you have the money. But I think it will be specific to downtown 2nd Avenue. So I don't have a problem with that 10,000 coming out of the budget of downtown redevelopment.
Well, let me ask, the commitment to the depot, was that ever completed?
It was not. 71,000 is still in deficit there. Is that correct, John?
It's in the 70s, and we usually get payment if we get payment in December. Okay, next one's the Entrepreneurial Center. 20 budget was 100, they requested 125, they were funded in the 21 budget at 100,000, and the revised number was 100,000. We've added 100,000 to get to the 365 gap we gotta close.
I'm sorry, say that again?
He says you have
Added
200,000 amounts.
It's really 200,000 now, because of the best and the brightest that we added the 100,000.
Okay, we need to make, wait, and Christie, Chuck, maybe you can help me better. They're two different things, right?
They're two different things, they need to be separate.
You want two separate contracts?
Yes.
Or do you want it spelled out in one?
Mr. Art, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
What is your thought on that? Do you consider them two different entities or not?
Yes, I do.
Okay. But since you thought some of the East Center came out, and I'll ask John that too, if any East Center money went to that. So-
Oh, it did,
Okay, well, I will ask.
but it wasn't done on the scale that he's envisioning now. But again, I think too, how do you account for it if it's 3,000 a year per couple for 5 years? That's a 15,000 commitment. The only looking, when we give him 100,000, is he looking at 33? Or is he looking at 6 for 5 years?
It's actually 6.666, so
Yeah.
it's 7.
Right,
But-
so if you look at it that way, then you're not gonna overextend yourself. If you say, hey, I got 100,000, I can do 33, you run the potential to overextend yourself if you don't get the funding the next year.
And I agree with you, and you and I have spoken about this, since we can't do the long-term commitment, that it be specific in the contract with Best and Brightest, the 100,000 would only, it would take care of 7 participants, that would take care of their allotted amount that would have to be
So
paid.
then you really, what you wanna do is 105 then, not to give more money away, but.
But, yeah, and I think that would help John out, John Joseph, in the end, because he still needs to, I'm not sure how many people he wants in the end, and I think it's over 100. But if our 100,000 we know will only take care of 7, I think that helps him probably add up in his head wherever funding he needs to get to supplement that.
But it does, yeah, and it doesn't put them at risk.
Yeah.
See, here's the thing, you enroll 33 people, and we have a second shutdown, and we gotta revisit, and things are worse than what they were this year. Okay, and he's at risk. So,
Well, there's
but
a,
if you account for it in total, he's got guaranteed funding for 6 or 7 for the entire program.
Question, and John, I know we ran this with the DU, they couldn't borrow as much as they wanted because that was illegal. Can, if we give this appropriation to John, can he put that in account and then begin to, whatever interest he can get on that? Or do you have to use it right away? I know there's some.
If we're gonna have a separate agreement for Best and Brightest, he can only use that for Best and Brightest.
But he can put it in an account.
He can
that
do it
can
any way he
accrue
wants.
and that's what I was gonna ask based on your conversation there, 6.66 buyouts, or whatever we wanna call it. That's covering the amount for the full duration, which is 5 years.
Correct.
So is that money put in an account that draws interest that helps pay future amounts? And I'm not trying to pick at it, I'm just saying, most things that are handled in this world are handled in escrow and prorated out. Here's how much we're gonna be able to pay out this year, next year, the year after.
I think it would need to be. We could verify with John on that, and I think,
I can set him up if he needs, if he wants to do it himself. I think it would be,
And remember, they're wanting to do this for like 10 years or something like like that.
I can't, Chuck, do you remember, I don't have it in front of me, do you know the
Which again, we can't say
duration?
pass this year.
Well, certainly, we've been looking at a 5-year plan, of trying to add, for this for 5 years. But let me just say for this year, I do have a suggestion of how to pay for this. And it is related to economic development. And as you know, that John handed out, at some point, the possibility of refinancing our debt. Well, some of those funds are going to go into the general budget. And I would just say that we could use 100,000 of that for best and brightest for 2021. That gets us out looking for the extra 100.
Could we use the water fund?
I think we heard suggestion of the water fund kind of up front there, and let me say this, I don't want to answer yes or no to that, but we used that water fund basically in the Morris development, didn't we?
We did.
And that took about 4 years worth of funds, maybe 5 years in order to do that.
You'd have to look back, I'm not sure how many years it was.
It's $200,000 or $300,000 per year that you get, we use close to $1 million.
And
My
then we
only
added-
point is, we start funding everything out of that, then you're going to be stymieing
Yeah, I-
economic development expansion for the city.
Oh, I don't
You
disagree
got to
with that.
utilities has to approve this.
That's
That's
the
sewer.
10 cents per thousand. Now, there was a little over $1 million that we allocated to the Upper River Road sewer. I don't know how much is left, plus what we collected from there.
So we can't pull up what we have
I
right
think
now?
it was 215 that we estimated water for resale revenue.
Right this second, we can't tell what we have in that fund? Oh, he's looking, okay, great.
It's probably been right a year since we did the Morris thing, so it's probably right around
There
200.
is a couple of hundred, I think, if that. Yeah, we're looking at 215.
But it also means you're using up funds for future economic development.
Yeah. 132.
So this has a return of $7,200. Okay.
That's not my number. I think that was Chuck was saying that. I think it was like 1.14, I don't know what it was. Right. The whole commitment was like 1.1.
I have an answer from Danielle.
Balance, let's say
The
the
cash balance is 440.
after the 1.1 or after the 8?
Well, yeah, the 8's been taken out, so if there's more, that will reduce that amount. But I'm not showing any.
The sewer's completed.
They had
I would
200K
have thought
left
we'd
in
have gotten all the
their
bills for
budget,
that.
So if
204. So you're looking 200 plus another 200 this year, right?
So what was that number?
400 if you take in 21's revenue,
I just want, right now, I don't want 21.
200.
Right, but I guess if you get right now and we spend $200,000, what I give you right now isn't really an accurate number because it can be reduced. If the project's done,
Yeah.
then you're at 400. But we budgeted for an extra 200K to be spent.
In
So
that project. So
if that
I
project
understand, I
continues,
understand.
then that,
But
We're gonna
Blake
make-
did that project, can we not call and say, hey, are all your bills in for that sewage?
Well, we do.
yeah.
Okay.
We have not gotten one that said this is a final, so it's still there.
And that money stays different than other spending because if it's not spent and that it doesn't become general fund unassigned balance, does it?
No, it stays separate.
Not at all.
Stay separate.
So that is a separate fund, not.
So worst case scenario, right now you have $200,000 in.
Right.
Herman, I'm going to ask your legal opinion. Would you, by the law, consider Best and Brightest an economic development project?
I'm not trying to avoid your question, that's something the council will have to decide. Whether it's a public purpose, whether it enhances economic development. I'm not trying to shift.
Could you pull me some law that I could read that may make me make a better, accurate decision?
Well, you look at how many people you're benefiting. What you're doing is you're contracting with them to provide you a service. And you must decide whether you in fact are getting more, at least or more than that in the way of a benefit. Or I'm not you, when I say you, I mean the community which who you serve.
But really, Best and Brightest, you are not receiving a service for them. They will be working for another entity. So I don't know what service, other than them living in the city, is what you're considering.
I'm talking about, you have to enter into a contract with the entrepreneurial center.
Okay,
And
this is
they
fine.
share with you how they're gonna spend the money, and how it benefits, and what service they're providing through those funds.
Well, they've provided that, but I think I'm at that point. Since they're not working for the city, the people that we're bringing in, they're working for a different entity. We're just keeping them in Decatur for 5 years.
You're looking at these tangential benefits.
Yeah, I mean, is it the service that they are adding to our population and could potentially stay? I mean, that, yeah.
What they're contributing back to your community, that's what,
Okay,
that's
very
what
good.
you're looking toward.
Gotcha.
So I think it's certainly, I would feel you're fine with finding it serves a public purpose, but y'all have to decide that. You have to look at how does this benefit your community as a whole?
Is it being administered the way you want it to be
You hold them
administered?
accountable to make sure the money's properly spent. And if somebody moves out of the program, they don't get the benefit of the additional money. In other words, they're making a contract themselves.
At the end of the day, we're still down to the same point on every line, every question. They're all good projects. They're all good purposes of spending money. The question is, in your priorities and meeting most of your needs, which ones can you afford to approve in a given year?
This has always been my stunt. It has to be for a significant amount of the public. We have 55,000 people. Now, significant to everybody up here is probably a different number. But I think you would have to then validate wherever your number was. If you're validating a 2 number as to a 30,000 number, there's a difference there. So,
Yeah, you just gotta
but
look at how
this is
they-
not the only one I struggle with.
Right.
All allocations I struggle with, do they meet that right there? And that is in the law of the state of Alabama. It has to meet a significant number of your residents. And yeah, that's subjective, but I certainly don't want to walk a tight line with state law either in breaking it.
Right. Well, you have to look at how these students are going to benefit your community by being here. Whether they're going to teach school, I mean, classes, not only education, I'm talking about like tutor and that kind of thing. Are they going to stay here afterwards? They're going to obviously spend money here, but anybody can do it.
But that's the thing, there's no contract that they have to stay. Now, we've been fortunate that I think 87%, which is a great
No,
number.
that's not what I mean
Yeah,
after the contract.
yeah, after 5 years, there's
That's
nothing, it's a gamble, essentially.
The community benefit is not the fact that you're gonna get $7,200 in revenue. It's what do they bring to the society of Decatur as a contribution of being here? Whether it's volunteer, whether it's the job they're holding or whatever. If you get caught up on that 7,200, I think you run into those problems about public purpose, public benefit. It's what these people do for the whole, provide for the whole community that matters. Anyway,
I go back to the 20-year projection that shows that the population of this city is going to be flat to negative. And what we're trying to do is change that curve, because in the absence of doing nothing, that curve will not change.
and that's fine, that's a public purpose. I'm just saying from a number crunching, I think you're better off with that. The question I guess we need to answer is, water for resale is for economic development. Do we consider best and brightest economic development? We fund it out of water for resale, we knock it off 100,000, we move on.
I won't support it under the water for resale.
I would support it.
Mr. Curtis?
You would or wouldn't?
Would not.
Carl?
I would support it.
Yeah, so you don't, so see, there's where that whole company is subjective, like Joe thinks it is and Charles doesn't think it is, so.
We're going to end up with another development. We want some developer come in and develop residentially, and we'll end up short of money because we will have spent every dime in this account if we start thinking that way.
Okay, let's go back
Well,
to, we did start a development
And
fund.
that's still there, it's like 800 and something thousand.
What are the criteria for that money?
That was just residential development,
Residential, okay.
all it was called. 20, residential.
So I guess, Charles, what I'm trying to say is we do have that, because I know that before Wiley left, which I think is a great fund to keep as well.
But look what we spent on the Morris development, close to $1 million.
Right, but if you have
That would take
800,000,
those two funds together right now to afford that.
that's true. I mean, we had to, but if think since 98, we'd had nothing to develop in the city, so that got to, that's where we got the 1 million. So I think it's on the developer and what they need. I mean, look at the Jeff Parker's development on the river. To my knowledge, they've not asked for any type of abatements as far as us helping them with sewer or anything like that. It's going to be a large development without asking for anything like that. Not saying it won't happen. I think that the investment we made as a city kicked off that residential development. You know, yes, I'm sure some developers will want the moon.
But
you know.
in looking at our future, we have to also know our past. In our past, we almost never had development money. Other communities were growing faster than we were because they always had that development money ready to go, any given moment, ready to go. We spend this money, it won't be ready to go when that one opportunity hits us and we won't have the money ready to go.
But you have to start somewhere. I'm not sure I don't understand that. I mean, that's when we started the development fund, the residential development. I mean, are you proposing we keep it for 10 years before we spend a penny of it?
That's an opportunity. It really does.
Then I think you miss out on development, especially residential where it is right now. I think that would be specific to what the development was, where it was, and what they were asking for.
And see, that water fund has not been in place that very long. That was a fairly recent development. Last council term, I believe.
That's been there a while. It's been there from DU for a long time, actually.
Then it was
When they did the resale,
Yeah.
Limestone County, that was when.
Was it 7 years?
That's what I was referring to, by somewhat recent.
Like that.
It's not been there, 20, 30 years.
2013, I think is what it was.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're looking at two different things. If you're looking at residential development as far as the development fund, that's one thing. If you're just looking at, what was it placed at?
But the water fund and the development fund.
Economic development, they're two
The
different
water
things.
fund and the development fund gives you a little bit of flexibility. You could
It
use
does.
them both if you needed to,
For,
depending upon what the project is.
yeah, I mean, you couldn't use the residential for anything but residential.
I
right now,
understand.
So it's kind of locked in there. I'd be very, very interested to know if we're finished out paying Blakesville for the sewer. Sewer's been complete for a while.
Well, let's don't get hung up on one item, because we got other items to go through, and we're probably gonna, I'm just gonna
But I
guess,
think-
having to
I think
vote
it
on
makes a
these all
very
along the
valid
way.
point to Chuck's thought of taking out of that economic development fund. If we have 400,000 and we're paid off on the sewer, then I don't know that I have a problem with it. But, I mean, that's something we've got to verify before we do. And I can do that too. Let me go to work.
Yeah.
All right.
So, are we or are we not taking it out of order for resale.
Let's make a phone call. Let's continue on to see if there's any here. Let's get to the bottom of the appropriations, take a recess.
Okay.
Let me see how many of these questions I can get answered.
Okay.
Okay.
Hudson Alpha, 20 budget was 15. They requested 20, we gave them 15, and then we reduced it to 7,500. Mental health, 20 budget was 20,000, they requested 30. We originally gave them 20 and then revised it back to 30.
I think that's another, it would be hard for me to
Morgan County Child Advocacy, 21 requested, 21 received, flat throughout, that was moved to the schools.
school show.
Morgan County Economic Development, 20 budget was 64.9, they requested 90. We had them originally in at 64.9, and it got revised to 61,000.
Would you say it was MC,
Morgan County
Economic Development?
Economic
That's what I
Development
thought, okay.
Association.
Give me those numbers again.
64.9 in the 20 budget. 90,000 requested in the 21 budget. Original budget number was 64.9, and then it got revised to 61.
And let me
Just
take,
thought- Just thought, it's economic development. It's not residential development, it's economic development. Can we take some of that out of, to fund part of the best and brightest?
You can do whatever you want. What you
I'm
do
just
is
posing
you
the
do
question
is-
to council.
Yeah, but it's appropriation. You lower it and you shift the money to somewhere else. That's fine. I mean, you can do that with anything.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Christie, what were you thinking, the whole thing?
Well, I mean, if we're prioritizing things, then yeah, I would say so, but we've got a list to go through, so if we want to decide what's important to this council, I mean, we've discussed, the free clinic and some of these others that we feel like need an increase, but then what's the second priority? Economic development and investing in other things that would create sources of revenue?
let me say something here that I've said before. If you go up and down this list, you see at least 70% of the people have asked us for an increase in appropriation. Last year, when we went over this, at least 70% wanted an increase in appropriation. Everybody is viewing the city like an endless supply of money. And the fact is that money is tighter and tighter every year.
John, I asked you to ask Jeremy for did we get that? What they use specifically for?
I sent that to you.
Did you? Okay. They are funded by the state though, and other companies, Indicator, the corridor probably as well.
Is that from that August
Just a
4th
thought.
email, John?
Since this administration started, Jeremy and the Economic Development Association, as well as all the other partners that participate in the team, have brought 1,100 new jobs to Decatur and PJ, as well as $1.2 billion, in investments.
And And how many of those jobs live in Decatur?
Mr. Kirby, I'm not sure. If you live in the region, you spend in Decatur. If you live in the Starkville area, Morris County, things of that nature,
If you live north of the river, you're probably less likely to spend in Decatur.
possibly. We do have people now who are working in that area that come back here and spend.
Oh, thank you.
Send it to everybody. I don't know if you have your.
I'll look at when we take our break. Okay, we have a question with that one. Okay, go to the next one, please.
Emergency management, 20 budget was 32,053, they requested 74,277. We funded them at 35, and then it was revised to 17,500. Discussion, we'll move on.
Well, and that was one, and I'm their liaison, that we would be the only municipality in the state to actually fund their EMA. That is federally funded. Any emergency that we would need, our county receives federal funds for that. That's why the county pays so much for the EMA. You go back and you don't see municipalities also funding the county. I think Charles makes a very good argument to that. If you're paying, if you live in Decatur, you are paying because you live in Morgan County. I think there's validity to that. I definitely think I'm in favor of cutting it, I don't know to zero, but I certainly can see a drastic cut because I believe they're adequately funded.
I don't understand why we are the only ones, and I didn't realize that until you brought it up, Paige, that we're the only ones in the state that fund that. I just didn't realize that.
I didn't either till just a couple weeks ago.
Okay. I didn't realize that, and if that's the case, I mean, I understand the need for it. I'm appreciative of what they do, very much so. But I don't know that our Morgan County EMA is any different than DeKalb County or Madison County or Baldwin County or any other county. So I don't know why we're funding and all the other 66 counties are not. So, or I won't say 66 counties, but municipalities are not. So I don't know that I can support continuing down that road.
And I don't mind drastically reducing it and letting them know that we're going to phase that out. I think that may be fair.
What do you suggest, Paige?
I suggest what are the appropriations?
17.5.
7,500?
17.5. Is that not right?
17,500 is where we are right now.
Yeah, that's what you said, 17.5.
I would say you probably at least cut that in half and give them notice that that is probably going to go to zero until either the state makes this by mandate or,
So 7,500?
I'm okay with that, if y'all are.
Did we not already cut that 17,000?
We cut it from 35, we cut it in half to 17,500.
That's right.
Yeah, I thought, I mean, I disagree with the logic that's going on here. We said we were going to give them time and cut it to zero next year, but, you know, if we have to, then that's one area we could do that.
Chuck is right, that was the last conversation.
So we have a cut there, right, John?
Cut it 10?
I think Chuck, are you not saying that it's already been cut to 17.5?
It has.
Yes, it was
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was my
It
understanding,
was
but
originally 35.
Okay.
like I said, I don't have,
Why don't we just cut it to zero then?
sorry, say it again?
She said cut it to
Why, if we're gonna
zero.
cut it again, we might as well just cut it to zero.
I don't personally have a problem with that. I mean, I don't. That's just my,
You know, I'll support that.
Do I hear a third?
You got one from Christie.
On your last one for the Economic Development Association, on the August the 4th email, it's the one on the far right. He's got 3 attachments, it's the one on the far right.
and again, John, I'm basing that on the fact that we're the only entity in the state that's funding that. And, you know, if every other entity can support themselves based on that. I think that ours is no different.
I just need a number.
Yeah, I think it's a luxury, more so than a necessity at this point.
0?
By my standards, I'm okay.
Zero.
0.
Then I guess I shouldn't have been addressing that to you. I should have been addressing it to our reporter here. I'm sorry, because she's going to be the one reporting it.
And I will call and double check when I go on our little break and see what law or whatever.
Good deal.
Okay.
Validate that.
Morgan County Health, 20 budget was 108,504, they requested 120. We funded them originally at 108,504, and we revised it to 120. Morgan County Health Department.
Was it Mr. Jackson or Ms. Bibby that you made the case about the COVID issue creating more of a need?
I did, I think Chuck
More than
also
just one.
addressed it. Did you not, Chuck?
I did.
I think Mr. Jackson did.
Yeah, it was Paige that said it initially. I was talking about the free clinic, but I support that. I think it's an absolute must, considering the circumstances.
Morgan County Rescue, 20 budget was 10,800, they requested 15, we had them in the budget at 15, and we revised them, they stayed at 15.
My problem with cutting that is I know they work with our fire department. We do have a lot of water rescue that is important. We do live on a river.
NARCOG. 20 budget was 135, they requested 150, we funded them originally at 135, and then after the revision, they were still at 135.
I'll go back to my original discussion. Mr. Jackson was actually on the phone with this one. I get many, many calls of folks that need public transportation. If you look at the application NARCOG brought to us, they say every penny of this 135 goes to public transportation. Again, I get numerous calls of folks that cannot use it because it's just not what they need. I know last year, which I really appreciate Robbie, I think he does a great job. Last year, all summer, for cooks in downtown, we did this little service. I think one gentleman, Brandon Dahl, as I got on weeks after he had started it, I think he told me 6 people had been on the bus the whole time. So I think we have to prioritize. I think that was great if it worked. If it doesn't work, you can't continue something that doesn't work. You just don't.
And I think it's simple things like, now, this is understanding that I have, and it may or may not be accurate, but they'll take you to the grocery store. Of course, they can't wait for you, I understand that, but they don't come back and pick you up in a short turnaround or something like that. And again, that's the only transportation that some of our citizens have. And I think that we have to have a workable product if we're going to fund it on behalf of our citizens. So I'm in total agreement with that. It's got to be something that works, or we've got to find a system that does. And so I'm
At the moment, this is our only option of mass transit, right?
This is very true. And so I think that, we've got to have, if it comes down to a point where we've got to sit down and have that conversation with them and say, this is where we are, these are our needs, and because I get that on a regular basis. I do. I just get it where, it's not working for us. And so people are still paying other people to take them to the grocery store, take them to the doctor, when we've got a system here that's supposed to be working for them.
And I continually get more and more folks, and I think that's only going to be an upward trend. I think while jobs are still insecure and money is tight, you will see that same thing where transportation is going to be limited. And I understand they have a process of 24-hour notice. To me, that I appreciate the process. I don't know that it works. It's hard to know that you ran out of milk or eggs. If something happens, I just think it's questionable. I don't know. I would encourage you, Mr. Jackson, since you'll be on the council, to reach out to that board and see if you can communicate the need. Because at this point, the more Uber we get, the more Lyft we get in Decatur, it would be just as cheap. And you have a turnaround of getting home faster than our community service. And that's problematic to me when I spend some time in Huntsville and I see their bus running like clockwork. So, and they take them to the grocery store or Walmart, and then they do pick them up
Yeah.
and take them home.
Billy, if you do an outreach to them, would you mind calling me before you make the call, and I'll share some of my experiences with you?
I will definitely do that.
Princess Theater, 20 was 80. That included a one-time of about $8,000 for financial documentation. They requested 120. We funded them at 72 originally in the budget. That was revised to 68,500.
That was for an audit, was it?
Yes.
I'd like to see us support the arts if we can, but even with this negative deficit, it just makes it hard. I think this goes back to what are our priorities?
I agree with
COVID has
Christie.
affected all of us.
And what is extremely unfortunate is we have a director, not that the past directors haven't done a good job, but Mary has really went out and gotten those acts to come in, especially the singing
Yeah.
and music. And unfortunately, COVID just destroyed all of that, and she is,
True.
feels terrible about it. But she has been a great director. It's just everyday cost for them is high. If we're talking about the senior center, I think their
I know.
council right now is actually doing a campaign to raise money to try and sustain it as long as they can, to try and get those acts in.
And they have performed some services for us, if I'm not mistaken. Stacy,
They
didn't
did.
they host some
They
training
sure
for you?
did. They let us use the facility to train poll workers at No Charge.
And I will say, under Mary's leadership, I've seen a lot more free movies, free activities that any person from any district could then, go see or be entertained by that. So, Christian, with you, I think we should support the arts. I think it's important.
Yeah.
It just gets down to numbers at the end, but I would,
True.
for me, rather not cut this anymore or the Carnegie until we see at the end if there are other avenues.
Okay, let's keep going.
Okay, Prior Field, 40 and 20 was the budget. I believe there was a 10,000 one-time in there.
Let's leave that at 30. We're 1/4.
Yeah, and then they requested 40 again. We put it in at 30 and it stayed at 30 after the revision.
Stay there,
Okay.
1/4 hour.
Volunteer Center, 7,220. They requested 7,200. The original 21 budget had them at 7,200, and it was revised to 6,800.
I know Chuck said that they make wheelchair ramps with that money. Is that something that we could forego this year and look at mid-year or next year? I mean, I know that's only $7,200.
I would recommend that we leave it at 68.
Okay.
The Orchestra Sul Ponticello of Decatur is 0.
Yeah.
Morgan County Chamber Partnership 5-year plan, 50, 20, 50 budgeted, 50 requested, 50 budgeted, and 50 after the revision.
What's the first chamber? What was it called? The heading?
First one was business development.
Business development.
And the last one is Boys and Girls Club. They requested 100,000, and that was moved over to the school.
Are we going to require the schools to fund $100,000 to them?
That was one of the 3, and I'm going to
Was
get
it 3 or
verification.
4?
Yeah.
They got,
Would not do the.
They got
program, so
25%.
They're not doing it, so they
of
would.
the SSUG, and 200,000 in programs, which was 64,000 for the library, 15,000 for youth symphony, 21,000 for child advocacy, and 100,000 for.
Yeah, I mean, I followed that, but I didn't know that, and when we discussed it the last time, the Boys and Girls Club situation came up, and I knew that we talked about $100,000 and transferring it over to the school system. I didn't know that we were firm.
It's not transferred.
Well, okay, well, going over with the quarter of
What
of
happens is
the
they, in
penny.
their budget, if you look at the small budgets in the school, they've got all their revenue sources, okay? There's also an expense side that we incur, tobacco stamps, these 4 items, there might be 1 or 2 other items. So we pay those as well as transfer money to them. So it's not like we transfer money to them and they pay that bill. We're paying it before we.
Before it goes to them. So basically what we're doing is we're deducting that from what we're going to send to them. I understand that. My concern is that the Boys and Girls Club, as we've gone over in prior conversations, duplicates a lot of the things that we do with youth services and other programs that we have here. And so I just don't see whether, no matter how you want to say they're paying it or we're paying it before it gets to them or what, I don't understand taking that out of the money that's going to our school system. I don't. When our school system is already working, at Oak Park, they've allocated space for them to have a facility at no cost, and they're doing things already, but to say that we're going to take that $100,000 out before it goes to them, I don't agree with that.
I spoke with Dr. Douglas about it, and actually he referred to Oak Park, and, well, it's not called Oak Park anymore. Was it called Decatur Middle, I guess, or?
No, it's Oak Park.
Oh, that's right. It's
Oak
the
Park
elementary school. He said that he felt that was a fantastic program, and he would love, if he had the money, which he was in favor of, to do that in another school, to have the same program essentially in another school, to help those kids in that school. So after speaking with him and saw his appreciation for that,
Yeah.
and we were there. It's great at Oak Park where they have it, and so I think that for me it was an easy call when Dr. Douglas.
But the only thing that I'm looking at is that if we're taking something off of our plate and we're allowing them to absorb that in that online sales tax, that's one thing. But this was not on our plate. This $100,000 was not on the city's plate. So we're transferring something to the school system that was not on our plate originally. So I think that if in their discretion, if they choose to do that, then that's fine. But is it for us to dictate that they do that? That's what I don't agree with, because it was not something that we were already dealing with. This is a new request, and with this being a new request, I think that this is something that if we don't want to do it and we want them to do it, allow them the latitude of saying whether they do it or not. That's just my perspective.
And I had, one second, and I had a letter from Dr. Douglas and several principals before we even talked about this to them, that they were requesting that we fund it because of the importance that it had for the school system.
Okay, well, and that's fine. I'm just simply saying, we're not going to fund it. Let's just say we decide we're not going to fund it. We allow them the discretion of saying whether they fund it or not, prior to taking it out of money that's going to be going across the street to them. We say, do you want us to take this out of your funds, or allow them to make that decision and that choice rather than dictating what they do. And in this regard, when it's not something this is not the grandparents program, and it's not something that they were already dealing with, that we were picking up the tab for, or the city was picking up the tab for.
I understand, and as I said, I went over and spoke,
Yeah.
and he was in favor of that being one of their allocations, happily in favor of it, because of the
I think we're saying the same thing. I'm just saying let them do that instead of dictating that they do it and saying you're going to do
But
this.
the point is, it's there, it's, by discussion, it seems appropriate. If you take it off, they're still gonna get the money, then the question becomes, do you want to fund them or not?
They may or may not, though. If something comes up when we talk about priorities, if something comes up that the school system sees as a greater priority, then they may or may not get that. But if it's in our contract with them that they get their penny from online sales tax, this is being a contingent of that process, then they have to get it, and that takes it out of their hand. That's all I'm saying,
Right.
is to allow them, and Paige said, Dr. Douglas is in favor of it, so more than likely they're going to get it anyway. But I just don't like the fact of dictating, that we're going to dictate, you're going to do this when we're.
But I don't think we're dictating, it was discussion, because I was at the meeting, it was discussion.
But if we take it out of their funds, John, prior to it going over there, and we're saying this is a contingency, then we are.
That was at their request.
But here, they agreed to it, and the main benefit to doing it this way is we take care of all the administration. We cut the agreement, we cut the checks and everything else. They don't have to do anything other than agree to fund that.
Okay.
And Ms. Jones, their CFO, did contact John because I was the same way, why don't let them do it? And she said, no, if y'all could do it, it'd be better for us to do it that way financially, and they worked that out.
So
And-
so you're gonna see the same contract that you see for everybody else. The only thing is that's different, it's a different funding source.
And again, that's fine. But if we give them the penny out of online sales tax, and they come back and they say, okay, well, we want you to handle the administrative services on this, that's one thing. But again, I don't know that I'm, you know,
I don't
and we're
sense
talking in
that-
circles, I understand that,
But
but,
I don't sense that we're forcing them to do this, okay? That's all I'm saying.
okay, and see,
We're forcing it. We're accommodating it by taking on the administrative side of it.
okay, I guess I just don't quite see it that way. So it's fine, we can move forward, if the consensus is there, we move forward, but I just don't quite see it that way.
All right, so that was the last one, so now we're down to 347, 420. Any ideas?
347, 320?
For us, 347, 920.
920, thank you.
On the question earlier about the tennis courts, last year we had 2 tournaments, 134 confirmed room nights. You have anywhere from 20 to 50% more room nights, you know are there, but they're not confirmed through the system. So anytime you have a room night, you know you have meals and a few other things that goes with that. So it's not massive economic impact, but it's substantial.
Normally, they'll give us a number associated with that economic impact.
And I could
They would
probably
not.
email back and ask for that number.
Okay.
There's probably, you're right, there probably is a formula.
I think if we're looking at whether or not we can afford to do this, or whether or not we can afford not to do it, I think that we need that number, basically, and I'm not,
I'll see
trying
if
to
I can get it.
dictate or say what you need to do, but I think we need that
Danielle
number.
should be able to just text it to you, Charles. It's a pretty simple formula that Dr. Girardi came up with. I think he was at the university, Auburn University, and the state tourism office uses it. The formula that I have it in my phone, I can share, but it may have been updated since me last serving in that industry.
All right, let me try to expedite this, okay? It's my belief that come December, January, that there will be funds to address needs, okay? Can't tell you how much, but I would be comfortable to say it'll be in the 7-figure range.
And that mostly because of the business license
Well, I
payments.
think
and
the
that.
revenue numbers we're gonna be loading up more numbers this week, but the numbers have looked pretty good for 20. So nothing to do with 21, this is how we're gonna finish 20. We took $500,000 out of the budget from marketing and training. That's pretty much held. The department heads have done a good job of scrutinizing what their needs are, cutting back where they can. And there's just built-in things that just don't happen. There's payroll lapse and things like that. So I think the money's gonna be there. Given that, I'm gonna throw this out. It might be a lead balloon, it may not, okay? If you wanna do the tennis courts, you want to do best and the brightest, and you want to cover the deficit. Cut the police vehicles in half to 250, address the rest of the need in December or January. And out of one of the economic funds, whether it's water for resale or from one other, funding your best and the brightest for 1 year.
Now, when you say cut the police vehicles in half, we've already cut it in half, so you're talking about cutting another half of it.
250.
So now we're down to a fourth.
That'd be about 6 or 7 equipped vehicles. Then address the rest of the need in December.
And what's the total number of vehicles we have, rolling stock we have right now?
How many vehicles we have in the police department? I want to say it's somewhere in the 150 range.
Yeah,
We're trying to buy at least 20 a year normally,
Yeah.
normal years.
I don't know.
That's the,
I don't know
to
that I can
me,
support
doing
that.
capital based on where you stand on your unassigned fund balance, to me, is the best way to do it. Because you have a number, we have X dollars, and we have capital needs. And you're able to prioritize based on the amount of money that you're willing to spend at that point in time. I can't give you that number right now because we haven't finished.
It hadn't
the
come in
year.
yet. I understand.
And it's an audited number that we don't get until December.
They have a fleet of 218 vehicles, 23 to be surplused, and 8 motorcycles. They've added 49 vehicles in the last 2 years.
Give those numbers again.
218,
Okay,
23 of those are to be surplused.
Okay.
So basically, they're just rusting. And 49 of those 218 have been added in the last 2 years.
okay.
And so I'm not saying don't buy additional vehicles. I'm saying wait till you can frame it from a funding availability standpoint. And then you're gonna have, other things you can deal with. Other departments are gonna have needs too, but you can kind of balance everything at one time.
So essentially, we're saying that we have 146 that we need to, at some point, be in the process of replacing.
Yeah, I don't have.
That's roughly, because, I mean, you gotta
Right, yeah, that's like-
you gotta take the surplus out, you gotta take the surplus out, and you're not gonna include the new ones.
Yeah.
So that's 72. But,
I think the target's about 24 vehicles a year over a 6-year cycle.
okay.
Hey, John, the tennis courts, if we could, because I'm listening to what you're talking about, if we could look at that this year, next year, we can try to get by and do what we can to make them, usable for we're about to get into the fall and into cold weather. But if we can look at them for mid-year, maybe that's a fix for right now, then we'll know better where we're at that time. Is that a help?
That's
I appreciate the thought, Jason, thank you.
I do too.
Well, I don't know the help, I'm just trying to help if I can.
I appreciate the help too, Jason. I just don't think that's gonna help you with next year tournaments. That means you'll lose them again next year, and the question is, how many years are they gonna not look at us, and will they come back and look at us if we get them fixed?
Well, it might, especially for next year, the year after, it might, but, I know we're probably not the only one. Like I say, I'm just trying to.
Well, my question would be, in terms of resurfacing, we deal with the same thing with paving the streets. Okay? Would we be able to resurface in the fall, or are we looking at the spring? And if we're looking at the spring, what's the availability and the commitment and everything else? So those-
You can get some of it done before it's cold. I mean, there's
Well,
a
that's what
part
I'm
to
saying.
that, yeah.
So
there's a
if you
special-
can, then we need to address it now and not wait till December, January.
Jason, is that not true? Dan said that you can get some of the, because you're gonna have to do some foundational work too. I mean, it does not need to happen in a wet or a cold season, but if we had that bid out, it could happen pretty soon without a lot of water.
Yeah, it would just be, scheduling it and all that. Like I say, my biggest, it's the work needs done. It's just a matter of, when, everything I used to talking about, I know there's tough decisions and, and maybe folks that want that done right now too, and like I say, it needs done, but, just if there was any way to help, I'll sit up now.
No, I appreciate it. I just think, and I think everybody on the council feels this way, that nonprofits in our city are wonderful, and we appreciate every single one of them. But we have to take care of business of the city first, and this being a city facility, should, in my mind, take priority over, and I think Christy and I, we've had this conversation, you gotta take care of what you own first, and then if you have extra, then you can go out and help others with it. And I wish I had pockets full of money, or the city did, and nothing was at question. But I think, certain things are our responsibility, period. Roads, right-of-way cutting. And so that we have to do before we go out and just begin supporting other entities, even though they're all wonderful. I just,
Hey, Paige.
yeah,
Did we cut the rest of that Hudson Alpha 7,500?
we didn't, but even though I think it's a great thing, I think I would be in favor of cutting that this year.
I think we should set that down to 0. We were able to do it last year.
And I think I would.
7,500.
Yeah, I would encourage in future years for the council to consider that. It's a great foundation in Huntsville, Alabama that is making wonderful strides.
As much as I appreciate everybody's open-mindedness, I wish we'd find bigger amounts.
Let me say this. Jason, you're there still? Jason? Jason? Yeah, I'd like for you to keep this on the front burner too, though. And when we redid, let me back up. When we built the tennis center, when the city built the tennis center, we actually, in that process, resurfaced every tennis court in the entire city. And that process, and going back to what Christy and Paige just said, is that we have to take care of our own properties before, we can take care of other things. And I'm a firm believer in that. So I think that even regardless of what we do with the tennis courts at Point Mallard right now, whether we find a way to fund it, or whether we decide to do it in the spring, regardless of regardless of what we do, I think that I'd like for you to keep it on the front burner, that we come back and redo every court in the city at some point, just like, if we've got the revenues there that John talks about us getting, I think it's important that, we got Delano, we got Carrie Matthews, we got Wilson Morgan, we've got courts all around the city that people use. And so I think it's important that if we're going to keep pace with our police cars and our equipment like that, it's important that we take care of the amenities like our tennis courts as well. So I'm just going to kind of task you with the fact that we keep that on the front burner as well, that we, rather than just letting them erode and go down to nothing to get to a point where we have to do them, I'd like to see us kind of address that sooner versus later, if you will. And if you'll keep that on the front burner with our next budget or our mid-year, I'd like to see that happen and be a part of our process.
I agree with you. I think it should be on a rotation, just like our cars are. Good thing,
Yeah.
Delano was done last summer, so it was just recently resurfaced. But I think all the others at Walter Jackson, at Julian Harris.
All over.
They need to be on a rotation, just like our cars. Some may not have as much wear as others, but I think it's a good thing to have. I really do. I agree with you.
Yeah, and when we did the center, we just did everywhere. And it was just, we took it upon, the city took it upon itself to make sure that we do them all at once. And, it made sense. And they've lasted basically until now. That's 14 years later, 13 years later. So I think it's important that we kind of keep up the things that will attract people to our
I
community and
think
our
one of the
city.
assumptions that was made back then, and it's technically before my time on the council, but I was watching. And I think one of the assumptions that was made then, the contractor's in town, he's already working. It's not that much more expensive to have him do the others.
Well, that was.
If you do them separately.
That was part of the consideration, because what we did was we bid out the entire thing at once at that particular time.
So your
And
lump
we
sum
might have
for all
had,
of
we
them
might have had
is-
multiple,
You are better getting them to do,
yeah,
don't just get them to do one or two, get them to do several while they're there.
Yeah.
Getting them there is a big part of the cost.
yeah, that definitely helped us with the numbers on that. So I just, I ask that you keep that on the front side, Jason, and we'll go from there.
Like all the school properties at once, school, city properties at once would probably be a good many.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I think, this whole time we've been talking about residential development, economic development, bringing people who best and brightest to Decatur. If we take care of our amenities, which we're known for the parks and recreation. Jason, you've done a fantastic job. I go to tournaments and hear people talk about y'all that aren't even Alabama, and they know about what a great parks and rec system we have. That's important. We have to show our people that live here and take care of our own before we go out and try to, I think, bring in others. If you take care of your own, you're going to attract others by the way you treat your family.
I agree.
That's what I consider Decatur, our family.
I agree.
All right, John, if we can take a brief moment, I'll make these phone calls and get some of these taken care of.
How long
And I do
is
have
the
a question for
break?
you, John.
don't know how you're doing.
I thought you said he had.
Encourage.
She's close.
Two more years following this one.
Did she start teaching and move her way up?
Yes, she did.
She did?
She did. Well, actually, no, she started as an aide.
Wow.
She started as an aide and she came to me and she was like, look,
We have, Christie and Chuck, are you still on the line?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I will give you my answers to the questions that y'all asked me to get. Spoke with Karen Duke, who was speaking with other members, and Dr. Douglas. They are perfectly fine with the $200,000 coming out every year out of their allotment from our online sales tax. Now, and she told me something that I thought the state had already ruled on the counties giving the 25%. They have, but the counties, or Morgan County, has also now appealed that, so it is still being held up. So Morgan County is not giving them their 25%. I think this will be a great thing for precedence in that case that is now at the Supreme Court at the state level, that if we're going to do it as a city, they certainly should do it as a county. Go ahead.
It's a small thing, but it's really not a penny. It's really whatever the state sends, they get a fourth of it.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not based on a penny.
it's, yeah, it's a little bit different.
And that's exactly what Ms. Duke said, that they thought this was a wonderful thing from the city of Decatur and welcomed it and had no problem with the allotments that we're asking them to pay. I did ask her about the grandparents. She said she was 99.9, but would text me when she got 100% sure the grandparents are only in the schools. They do not go anywhere else.
Okay.
So as soon as she texts me with that 100%, I'll let you know. The question for John Joseph, has any money ever come from eCenter to fund Best and Brightest? The answer is yes. He said a couple of $1,000s has come out of the eCenter budget to fund Best and Brightest. My question from there was, since you're starting a bigger Best and Brightest, are you going to make those two different funds? And he said yes. He goes, in fact, Best and Brightest is now a bank independent account that will only be Best and Brightest. So Best and Brightest funds cannot be used for the eCenter, but eCenter funds can still be used for Best and Brightest. And I asked him what I would like to see him do, and I guess we can write this into the contract with him, that each year that he comes back and asks for it, that he have to disclose if any money from the eCenter has been used to supplement Best and Brightest. That'd be for future councils, so you would know. Because we'll be giving two allotments, 100,000 to the eCenter, 100,000 to Best and Brightest. So if he's using everything we give for eCenter to Best and Brightest, well then, he needs to be upfront about that. And I think he will be. That was his answer
Did
there.
you mention whether he was, when we had that discussion about 33 versus 6, how he was handling our 100,000?
Yes, and I told him in our contract, this is how we would write it, that the city of Decatur, we were funding 7 people to participate in the Best and Brightest. And I asked him just what his general thought is, was he going to go out kind of on a limb and hope he got the funding? He said no, he would only go out and bring in these students or workers, if he had the funding.
For the entire 5-year period?
Correct. So our accommodation there will be for 7 people, period, unless, in future.
When you say 7 people, we know the cost is 15 per, does that mean it's now 105?
It is $3,000 per year for a 5-year period.
Right, which is 15,000, and if we fund 7, that's 105.
Was he assuming he could round up the other 5, or are we giving him exactly 100 or 105?
I said 100, I forgot about the 5, I'm sorry, we would have to, anyway.
Okay.
I can call it, that's a minor adjustment we can make.
Well, we could, instead of saying 7, we could say fully commit those funds
Well, you could say 6.
in the current year.
You could say 6.
And then he
and
can
that-
figure out how to do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Or you could say 6, and that would take care of the difference. They do have to live in the city of Decatur, not in the PJ. It has to be in the city of Decatur. They do not have to work in the city of Decatur, but have to live and reside in the city of Decatur. And if you decide to leave in the middle of your 5 years, you forego your whatever payment you got of $3,000 per year. That's all you get. Would be foregone. Any other questions of that I can remember while I talked to him that y'all have?
And what's the criteria for getting into the program, other than being a resident of Decatur?
Well, I've seen the application.
It's changing your residency to Decatur essentially.
Yes, and Chuck or Christie, do y'all happen to have that application close to y'all?
I'm looking for it right now.
Well, it includes an interview process too, doesn't it?
It does, and I think there's a board that kind of goes through that, Alex, so that would be
Okay.
that. But maybe Christie will find that.
Is that the same as the E-Center board?
I don't know. I could find that out too.
I
Chuck, are
don't
you
know
there?
I don't know that it's life and death.
Chuck may know. He is on the East End board. Chuck? I'll get those
I got
answered.
an article I pulled back from WHMT. It applies to anyone who has earned a STEM degree.
Okay, STEM.
2014.
Science, technology, engineering, and math, I think.
Science, technology, engineering, and math, yes.
And there is a interview process. But maybe Christie can find that. Okay, that's the Eastern
I got
question.
2 updates on our earlier conversations.
Okay, I called Mr. McAnally. He is looking, and he is going to text me whether we are complete with the project on Upper River or not. And if we are not, he will then tell me what that price is. I'm still waiting his text, which should come. EMA, actually, we talked about no other municipalities. If you go back, and I don't know if you were here, Mr. Jackson, when Brandy came to speak, she's the new director, she actually said it in the interview for the allocation, that she did not have the director position at the time, but was wondering when she took her position why the city gave them another allocation, because no one else does that. So you can go back and look, it is on YouTube. So she even admitted that this was
She wasn't
unusual.
expecting it.
Correct. Well, when she took the job, she was wondering why the city of Decatur gave that. And Herman, I've been asked to look at the contract, and I do have a copy at my house, but I don't have it with me, of the EMA contract we signed with them. What is the relevance of it?
That's,
It's just a standard.
it's a standard budget, where they spell out what they're gonna do for us and all that.
Okay, so there is no compensation spoke about in that contract.
No, it's a contract whereby that's how much we're gonna pay them. The services they provide are listed there. And then we designate how much we pay for those services. That's done annually.
So then we have to pay them. Is that why this allocation is in here?
No,
No, it's an annual,
No.
y'all decide how much you allocate to
You,
it.
you need a contract in order to appropriate the
To
money.
exchange money.
It spells out.
Okay, so let's say we take down to zero,
They get no contract.
and we have no contract. Okay,
Yeah.
question answered.
Yeah.
Okay, was there another question? He's gonna text back, she's gonna text back. I think that's all the questions you have. Go ahead. And I'll check my phone for answers from Blaken.
On the hotel stays, on the tennis tournaments, they're not using those formulas anymore. They're trying to work on something new, but don't have anything to give us right at the moment. Whatever formula we're using is outdated.
So, in other words, we can't come up with an economic
actual number.
impact number.
But the outdated formula was showing an impact of some sort.
I didn't actually ask what that amount was.
I mean, you said something about hotel rooms, so I mean, that would be.
Yeah, it was 134 confirmed rooms, and those rooms typically run anywhere from 20 to 50% more than they confirm. In other words, as people buy into a certain reservation, sometimes people don't make a reservation, they come for the same thing.
Okay.
They don't register. On the police vehicles, of the total vehicles, 10 are drug vehicles, 35 of the vehicles in that list can be surplused, 5 are animal control vehicles, 3 are criminal investigation vehicles, and 35 are special use vehicles, and 108 total vehicles in the patrol division.
What was that number 35 before the 108?
That's special use.
Also, it's 30 vehicles in CID criminal investigations, not 3, that's 30 vehicles
30,
in the criminal investigation.
Yeah, I meant to say 30. If I said 3, I apologize.
Chief, what number of those, okay, you said we could surplus 35?
Up to 35, that's correct. I think we're in the process of surplusing right now 23 out of the 35. I am purposely holding back on the surplusing the other ones for special needs, and I can explain to you that special need one-on-one, please.
Okay. So how many total, I know that we're looking at funding $500,000. How many vehicles do you think that will get you this year?
Roughly 10.
10. Do you know,
That's the trouble.
do you know how you're going to divvy those up with the numbers we have? Do you have ones that are in more need than others to be replaced?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. We go by year.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Still waiting on those 2 confirmations. Anything else? Ms. Hill, did you find that application by any chance?
No, I didn't. I think I have a printout. It's in my office. So I can ask John for a copy if you'd like.
Yeah, will you ask John, if you don't mind, I think he is watching, text him those questions, the process, and whom is on that interview process, and who eventually picks the folks to come. That would be my only issue going forward with councils in the future, just knowing, him being upfront with how much e-center money is being used. I think that could be significant, I mean, because it can't go the other way. All right, John, did we have a thought over there, maybe?
I'm at 340. I think you want to go best and the brightest, we go to water for resale under economic development and fund it that way.
So what Chuck offered, is that an option with the refinance?
But I may not see that refinance money till December.
Okay.
And I would not like to do I will gladly pay you tomorrow for a hamburger today.
Contingency.
Wimpy.
Well, and as soon as Blake lets me know, he's going through their bills right now, that may be 400,000, not 200,000.
6 maybe, because
Okay.
we're anticipating 200 more for next year. So 200,000 in revenue coming each year.
Gotcha. Well, he's going to confirm it.
Right.
And I asked him if we were not finished paying to give me the price that we owed so that we would know.
Yeah, and again, you've got the residential reserve, which is 8 and change. You've got the water for resale that will have anywhere from 400,000 to 600,000. And Heritage has another 500 for residential reserve in 2021.
Wait, I thought Heritage was restricted to,
Infrastructure. Sewer is infrastructure. You gotta watch where you spend it, I mean, but it's
that
infrastructure.
gets pretty dicey, Lonnie. I'm
Well,
real careful with
I
that.
can guarantee you, Herman and I come to an agreement on Heritage before we spend any Heritage.
Oh, I don't think y'all do anything. I
No,
think
no,
it's
no, no, I'm
in the
just saying.
future, that you need to be very careful what you do.
The
There are laws.
The residential reserve that we have right now, that 800 and change, is 500 in Heritage and 300 or so in general fund,
297, 181.
297. So there's 797 in 20 money for that residential reserve, 500 and 297. And then there's another 500 in Heritage. So you've got over $1 million that is going to be there for residential development before you even look at the water for resale money, which has anywhere from $200,000 to $600,000.
Okay, but let's go back to the Heritage Fund. If we're taking 500 and allotting it to the residential growth, how much is in it now that's heritage that can be used for infrastructure other than residential?
There's more money there. I mean, we got to, Heritage has a balance.
No, but we've used heritage in the past for
Maybe.
structures we have now, buildings, that have needed infrastructure
Infrastructure.
issues. Yeah, and we have
Correct.
several that are in need of some repairs, so.
Can't do
yeah.
repairs.
Okay.
It's got to be capital.
Okay.
Okay?
I
You
think
can't do-
we've tried to use it several
You
ways. So
cannot
there-
do maintenance,
That's right.
and you cannot do repairs.
Okay, but we can do infrastructure. There've been some
So we can do
infrastructure needs.
infrastructure.
that
For
we-
instance, I think the big thing, and Brad's not here, in this building, it supports the IT backbone in the basement, because that's the major infrastructure component. You cannot replace a laptop that's on your desk with Heritage,
Gotcha.
but you can replace major components
Like the wire
in
to
the
the
room.
router.
Well, not even, yeah, wires or even servers or whatever. That's part of the infrastructure backbone.
Perfect, thank you.
We did the AC in the Aquadome there this year.
That's right, we could use it for.
And I think we did one of the rec centers the year before.
Carrie Matthews, did that come out of Carrie? Okay.
Yeah,
What about the room at the library?
no.
Hey, Betty.
Yes, ma'am.
John Joseph said that prior to the East Center, he coordinated, and now the East Center staff does the interviews and makes the decision. He said that they could establish a citizen committee.
Right.
So his East Center staff, 3 people?
Yeah, him, and he just says East Center staff, so I know that Donna Whitten and Lori Crawley
Yeah.
are employed there.
Yeah, that's what I was.
And Lori usually coordinates a lot, works very closely with the National Project, so,
Yeah, I was just making sure it was those 3 is that he considered
yeah.
employees. I guess my question, I know Mr. Way is still there. Is he considered an employee?
He's no longer there,
Okay.
my understanding.
Okay.
Appropriating.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And does that include the
Can I ask you a
500
question?
reserve?
I would think you would want a citizen committee. I mean, just, not that I don't trust the 3, but I mean, I think you may want a broader brush. I don't know.
I don't want to micromanage telling them how to make the decisions. I do think it should be made up in some way
Appropriate
by
another 5.
a committee of Decatur residents.
Well, and I'm looking at dynamics too, and I'm looking at,
400.
I think it should be more diverse, let's just say that, just because I think things need to be diverse. We live in a very diverse.
So in Heritage,
Okay.
after you take into consideration the residential reserve
Mm-hmm.
and what we've got in the 21 budget, there's still a balance of about 400,000.
Very good. So if we have another unit go out, for instance, we would, okay,
Yes.
perfect. Could that be used, or did we fix the unit at the library? Or did we just repair?
There
it?
was work on it in the last year.
It was not replaced.
Okay.
It was
We
not-
could use Heritage for that if it catastrophically just come crumbling down, right?
If you cut out the whole unit and put a whole new
Okay,
unit
just-
in, yes.
Just making sure.
You replace components, no.
Gotcha.
That's right.
To be honest.
Any other questions? So if you take the 100 that you're proposing out of the you said water fund,
Yes.
so that would bring our total down to,
240, 420. So here, and again, not pushing one way or the other, tennis courts, in or defer?
Which place?
The 1-7.
Sounds like the ones at
Point
TC
Mallard.
Allen. Point Mallard.
They're in.
They're in now.
Okay.
So that, no, they are, I'm just saying as a statement. But if we took them out and said in December,
Then you're down to 70,420.
well, I'm
I think
going
we should do that.
yeah, I'm going to be honest at this point, by the time we got those, because we just got the specs, by the time you bid that out, and a
Right.
contractor who is capable of doing that type of work came in, you're looking at least October. And it's, I
Yes.
think it's 74 degrees, has to be above 74,
So
72.
you're guessing it can't be done
understand-
until March or April is what you're guessing?
Understand from a process standpoint, Charles cannot go out for a bid without having the money in hand.
I understand.
So it's not like 1 October he can go. It's
I hate it. I think-
when the
I
money
mean-
is allocated in 2021.
I hate it. I think that, again, those didn't happen overnight, so it's unfortunate we did not get those specs in time to get those before next year's tournaments. Will probably not be here either. But I would think it would need to be looked at pretty
But-
quickly, because
but-
you're talking 10 even the public can't use.
And again, all right, that's the downside. Here's the upside. Now you're aware, Councilman Jackson brings up a good point about looking at all the tennis courts. You might be able to take advantage of economies of scale. You might get different bids because you've got 25 courts instead of 10 courts, and that might bring the price down, it might bring different contractors in, or whatever. Plus, it gives you time to strategize and kind of think about where you're going and everything else.
I think
It's
that'd
not
be
really a
fantastic.
bad thing.
Yeah, I think that'd
And
be
with this
fantastic.
COVID area, some of those contractors are going to be hungrier than before.
Yeah, so, I mean, you know.
And we have to look at upgrading what we have that people can actually do during COVID.
Correct,
and
but
getting-
I think it goes beyond the Point Mallard tennis courts. There has to be an overall evaluation and a solution, a strategy on how to deal with it.
Totally
And
agree.
then move by it.
Totally agree.
So-
Again,
so
wish
by
we'd had
deferring
the
that,
specs before.
You're creating the time to be able to put that package together and make the case, so. All right, so we're down to 70.
So you did say pull the 170 out, right?
deferred.
Well, I would say defer it until December.
Yeah.
When you have your.
So you're
because
adding
right
it
now,
back
we're not-
in, what I was saying, getting rid of your negative.
Right. Well, we're not gonna have time now to do it. I mean, there's
I
no
got
time
you.
with the
I
specs.
just want to be
being
clear
given
what your
yet.
statement
Yeah.
was. So John says you're down to a minus 70 now.
Even?
It's changed.
70,420.
Council? No, council?
Chuck's having trouble.
Ground control to Major Tom.
Yeah. I need some help here.
Where's olive oil?
Were there any other thoughts on approach, NARCOG, Chamber, EDA, any of those?
I foresee that in the budget process of adopting it, Mr. Jackson has always asked for those to be done single, and I think that I will ask for those to be done one at a time again this year, so.
Oh, not a problem, I'm
Yeah.
just wondering if those are
Cuts.
any of the numbers we want to adjust.
Mr. Jackson?
I'm in agreement with that. I would like for them to be done separately. And are you asking for what numbers I want to see cut?
No,
Yeah.
no, yeah, well,
Well,
Yes.
I'm just
Let's
saying.
clarify where we are. He just walked in the room.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I had to answer an
We-
important
we-
call.
We were at 347.9, excuse me, 340.420.
Okay, I didn't bring my,
And that's been trimmed to 70.
7420.
And what we did was, we deferred the tennis courts,
okay.
and so that'll be looked at citywide, not just Point Mallard, and come up with a strategy.
But we can do that in a timely manner that won't impact tournaments coming or going? We can't do that?
I-
Okay.
you gotta have the money in hand to attack
even
the
bid it.
problem. So,
We could appropriate money to Point Mallard this year. I just don't know if they get the work done before it gets too cold. So I think we're another year with no tournaments, which is a bad thing because they may not be good. But, you know, you do what you gotta do, I
I
guess.
tend to agree with that, but anyway, let's go, let's go.
okay,
Yeah.
moving the best and the brightest to another funding site, namely Water for Resale, which is economic development.
And we've got what, in that 800,000 in that now? Is that what it said?
4 to potentially 6.
4 to potentially 6. And it was 800,000 in the residential.
Correct.
There's 800,000 and change in residential, and then there's another 500 in heritage for residential, so you're over $1 million going into 21,
Okay.
including what's in 21.
And essentially, those funds can be used for the same thing,
Residential
development.
development.
Okay. So there's no benefit to taking from the greater of the funds than the lower of the two funds? There's no
Well, by
advantage?
definition, water for resale is economic development. Residential development is residential development. I think it would be a stretch to say.
Okay, that's true.
Bride is
That's true.
Residential development.
I guess, to me, the best and the brightest is a stretch for economic development, really, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, that's
I would
the
think it would
majority.
almost be more resident, I'm with him a little bit, residential, because you're requiring.
You're paying-
We're requiring them to
You're
come
requiring them to live in
here.
the city, but you're not requiring them to work in the city. So it looks like it would be more residential
If
than.
you want to define it that way, we can. What we defined it as was funding that would assist in the development of residential areas.
Okay, all right.
Okay? Now, if you want to include some expansion in that definition, that's fine, but that's where we were
Okay,
right now.
all right.
Okay, so that 100 takes us down to 240. The tennis courts deferred take us down to 70,
420.
420. And my last comment was, were there any changes to any of the posts?
I mean, I have changes, but, you know, the others might not feel that way.
3
Well,
votes is a change.
70,000, throw them out there.
Yeah,
I've got,
I asked him.
I've got more than 70,000, but anyway.
Yeah.
I've got 149,000 actually, but anyway, it's where we are.
Well, when Paige mentioned that you typically take them one at a time, I think the guesswork was that not everybody would vote for the same ones.
Yeah, that's true.
And so we're guessing that there will be some kind of changes in the numbers from there.
Yeah. And I think it's important that we take them one at a time, especially looking at how tight the budget is. It's important that we look at these things individually and vote on them based on their merit to impact, you know, our community. So that's where I
I
am.
thought we did that. No?
What?
No, I think we're continuing to do that, so.
I mean, we went through the list and we made some adjustments.
But
I think
if we
you
come down to the
continue to do
vote
that.
on the appropriations and some appropriation doesn't carry 3 votes, then you know you're gonna basically take that out anyway.
Well, I think we'd be better off if we knew that ahead of time.
So you still want to get past that last second, is what you're saying?
I mean, what's the...
I'm okay with that. I mean, it doesn't matter to me one way or the
I'd
other.
rather know something's not gonna pass and use that as a cut than to cut something and then have something else that's not passed.
I'm good with that. I mean, it doesn't matter to me either way. 6 in one hand, half a
Well, I
dozen
don't
in the other
think
for
we can
me.
know something's not going to pass until we actually vote.
You sure?
So I think John's
Okay, I
saying,
mean,
you're
you
saying
just
you
call
want to
me
address
back.
that 70 now.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, I can go one and tell you, I can give you an agency name and a number, and you tell me whether we got 3 votes or not. And if we got 3 votes...
And that's polling. I can't do that. That's polling. I mean, well, I guess that's kind of what we've done though when we say that we're not wanting that, but that,
Last year.
How about this, Herman? How about we have another meeting that is an official meeting and we vote only on the appropriations? And that way it's out there.
go ahead.
Talk about in a formal meeting.
1 second. Go ahead, Herman.
Talk about in a formal meeting.
Yes.
We
And
just have
and
to-
all we will be doing is looking at the appropriations for that one meeting. We make whatever we do, and then we go back, and then we bring back the full budget and pass it. That we can do legally, right?
Let me ask you this, though. We're in a special meeting right now. This isn't a work session.
I mean,
Yes.
It's a special called work session.
Work
yeah.
session.
Special called work session.
Yeah, we did not call and take on.
So can we do it tonight at the meeting?
I'm fine with that, but I don't know if the others have had time to decide
I'm okay
where they
with it.
are on things.
I'm okay with it because I have, I mean, I've looked at what, I mean,
This is Chuck.
I
Yeah.
feel that I need to support and what I
He's been really trying.
can't support.
Chuck, I'm sorry, we were in the middle of a conversation.
I got you.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Well, I'm sorry, I've been trying to figure out a way to get in. I could hear you, but I could not say anything. And it's undoubtedly it's going on. I want to go back to the question where you were talking about a committee for the best and brightest. That is something that is certainly expected and anticipated. Up until now, the funds for best and brightest have been private funds. So the staff of the E-Center making that made some sense. But as I have talked with John, he is not opposed. In fact, he welcomes input from others in making that decision.
Hey, Chuck?
Good. That's what I figured.
Yes.
Question, I thought that some past allocation had been referenced for best and brightest.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what
Maybe you're saying that he used E-Center money?
Yes, part of the
Chuck-
100,000.
Chuck, John did confirm that he had used E-Center money to fund best and brightest.
No, I understand.
Okay.
I was trying to answer questions before, and even though it's in there, I was trying to set the record straight.
Okay, I mean,
Okay.
are you saying you deny that John's used best and bright, I mean, E-Center funds? Okay.
No, I was
Okay.
just trying I've been trying to say something for about 20 minutes, and I could hear you, but I could not say anything.
Okay. And my only suggestion to John was this, that if he came back to a new council, that he disclose the past year if he had used any E-Center allocation money to fund Best and Brightest.
And I think that's fine.
Just to be upfront, yes, I think that's appropriate.
And I don't think you will see any of those funds allocated to Best and Brightest in the past. He hasn't had any. So I would imagine that he took some to help fund that.
All right, thanks.
Can I suggest this?
One second, let me ask. Chuck,
Yes.
will you be at the meeting tonight?
I don't know.
Are you prepared to, what we're thinking of doing is voting on the allocations first outside of the budget to see if we have
Balanced budget.
consensus on each and every one of those. So we're looking for a time to vote on just the appropriations. Someone suggested tonight's meeting. I don't know if you've had enough time to think about what your thoughts on appropriations would be, just asking.
Yeah, I know where I feel, so yes.
So you're good,
I-
Mr. Jackson?
I'm good.
Mr. Kirby? Ms. Hill?
Yes, I'm fine.
Okay.
I will be calling in.
Okay, that's fine. So we will do that. Can we do that? Will that help you out? Perfect. Perfect. How do we need to do that? Just announce it, or it can be other business, right?
Well, it's
It'll be
y'all's
tonight.
agenda.
Okay, we'll add that at the
You
end.
want it added, you can add it.
We'll need a
Does it
number
need-
for that, right?
Does it need immediate consideration?
It's not a resolution, Andrew. You're giving me guidance on what the
He
funds
just
are.
wants to know what the final number
Herman?
is.
He's gonna come back, once you tell him what you wanna do, you vote on each of them, then he's gonna put that in the budget and presume that that's where y'all want to be.
Okay.
Everybody okay with that?
So if something doesn't get a majority of the votes, you're automatically zeroing it out, and we're not adjusting that number, you're just
Well,
automatically
it could be
zeroing
an
it out.
adjustment, it could be a zero.
Okay.
It's whatever gets passed.
There's nothing wrong with y'all discussing, you're in an open forum, there's nothing wrong with discussing, just like you've been doing,
Right.
minors.
Yeah.
The only difference is right now, you can't officially vote.
Yeah, what did we decide on the senior center? Are we leaving that at 48, John?
Yes, sir.
When you came with the number,
And I
Yes,
tried to
sir.
call her and I didn't get an answer. That was the other one, I'm
Still
sorry.
at 48.
Can you look on her application to see if she has more than one telephone number that I
and
can
we
call?
are, oh,
Thanks.
and we are where now? Where's our total that we're short?
We're at 70,420.
See, I would
-7,000.
suggest that we amend that to, that we adjust that to 24,000, because as Kyle said, that, we're looking at things like utilities that are gonna be, ongoing, that if we adjust that to 24,000, and if we ever come to a point where we have to amend that, that's different. But at this particular point, I think that it's reasonable to put it in at half of that, since we have money left over from 20 at this particular point.
We could do that tonight
Yeah.
and formalize it in a.
Yeah, I mean, that would just be my suggestion,
I would support
that we cut that in half.
Senior Center?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes, okay, I support that.
And their original ask was,
they're at 48,000, and we're gonna cut it to, and I
They
suggest
Ask for 55.
55,
But-
we were at 51, and revised to 48.
revise it to
Right.
48, so we're actually sitting at 48 right now, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and so
That'd be a
if we cut that in half to 24, and we have to at some later date amend that, then we do that, but if there doesn't come a time where they're running short, then we're good with that, is the way that I kind of see that. Which takes another 24 off of it.
right,
Which puts us now short 46, 420.
Okay?
Am I right, John?
Yes, sir.
46, right, 46, 420. Okay. Well, how about we do that this evening with the appropriations, John, and we'll see where we're at the end of that. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'll work.
Because we are only at a deficit now
That'll
of
work.
46, 420. I'm sorry?
Good work, team.
Good endurance, Kyle and
That's
John.
right. Gotta stay at it. All right, thank you, what time is it? Thanks, Christy and Chuck. We'll see you about
Yeah.
5:30. Thank you.
Bye.